What is up, fellow sickos? I'm Dan Favale coming at you with my certified fantabulous co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. We are taking a break from our 2025-2026 NBA season look-ahead series to finally, at long last, deliver our off-season report cards. We said we were going to wait out the restricted free agents. We waited out half of them, over about two-thirds, or exactly two-thirds of the ones in the East. So it's time. We don't know what's going to happen with Quentin Grimes, but so be it. We waited until, this is later than last year, Grant. We waited until September last year, but it was not late September. As a quick reminder before we get started, the Look-Ahead series is a bear. So subscribe if you haven't already, but go check out all those episodes, share them, comment on them. There's now hype points that you can give on YouTube, so that helps the video's exposure. Can you do that for us? We would appreciate it, both Grant and myself. Other than that, check us out on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Ratings have gone up, so thank you for helping us there, but leave reviews on Apple. Those help us too. Those are all the housekeeping notes, so we now get to the most important question of the day, of the week, of the month, of the year, of the millennia, quite frankly. Grant, how the heck are you doing?
I feel a little disappointed in us because we caved in the restricted free agency staring contest, which seems to be how those have been defined. We just had to do the podcast. We couldn't wait for. Sorry, Jonathan Kuminga and agent Aaron Turner.
Well,
we didn't have time.
Kuminga has time still. He's got another week before we get to the Warriors.
Just eons of time. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Glad to do this. This isn't like a closing the book on the off season necessarily, because as you said, like it's kind of still ongoing in pockets, but we're going to get some grades down and we are going to stop thinking about the off season and look forward to the regular season with more look aheads and just with more predictive stuff coming up. So this is a look back. I think one of the last look backs we're going to do before we turn the page.
Yeah, for sure. And for anyone who's interested, we do try to hold ourselves accountable, so there will be regrades at some point after next season's over, so we can go back and see where we got wrong. You're free to get angry in the comments. I mean, that helps juice the out. Like what they say, any like bad publicity or bad engagement is good engagement technically. Sure. So you can get mad. If you're right, we will revisit it, and you will see how wrong we are on some of these. But before we dive in, and our order is going to be by division, so it's alphabetically by division. We're really we're playing with fire here, folks. The straight alphabet is just tough for us to begin with. So when we're approaching this, just to lay out the criteria, what do you think is the biggest element that us and everybody else needs to keep in mind?
Yeah, so to try to kind of, I don't know, not streamline it, but keep this as consistent as possible for regrade purposes, among other things. What we're looking at is, we're trying to save ourselves work ultimately down the line. That's really what this has all been about. What we're looking at is Team X. What was Team X trying to do in the offseason? What were its goals, as nearly as we can determine them? And then from there, I think we have to weigh in on, and this will affect the grade for me. I won't speak for you, but to a significant degree, do we agree that what they were trying to do is what they should have been trying to do? For example, like if a team should have blown it up and didn't, that's going to hurt their grade for me because they just took the wrong path, I think, in my opinion. And then from there, while acknowledging whether or not we agree with the direction they're going, how did the moves they made serve that purpose? That to me is kind of the two-step process for our evaluation. And then, as you always note, C is average. C is that's not a bad grade. It's you did fine. We're not saying you did poorly. We're also not saying you did well. It was like satisfactory. Anything to add to that? Because I'm trying to keep it like fairly concise with our criteria.
I think the only thing I would add is that these are not every team is graded on the same scale because all of them have, so throw out their directions for a minute. All of them have different types of resources available. The Nets had cap space and basically no other team did. So it's like you're viewing them through that lens. And also their aims matter. So whether we agree with it or not, as you mentioned, the Nets are not trying to win. And so the fact that they don't look like a playoff team, they don't just get an F. This is not straight. We're grading teams according to what's their win-loss record going to be. It's relative to expectations and their vision. And as Grant mentioned, but I'll just echo, yes, our subjective opinions on was this the right move or direction will creep into how we go about evaluating all of these squads.
Yep, well said.
You have anything else to add?
I don't think so. I think we should get into it.
We begin with the Atlanta Hawks. Do you want to take us through this first list of transactions? Greg?
Sure. So the big one that will probably take up a fair amount of our discussion here. On draft night, the Hawks traded the number 13 pick to the Pelicans for number 23 and a 2026 first-round pick, unprotected. That pick will be the most favorable of the Pelicans or Milwaukee's. I think you have Indy in the graphic, unless I have that wrong.
Oh, apologies. Yeah, that's my bad.
So we'll get into that. Just to run through a few more here. Atlanta also acquired Nickeil Alexander-Walker in a sign and trade for Cleveland's 2027 second and a 1.5 and 1.5 million. Alexander Walker that was then signed as part of that to a 4-year, $60.6 million deal. There's a player option on the final year. Signed and traded Clint Capella to Houston. That was part of a much larger trade for a 2031 second round swap coming from the Rockets and David Roddy, who was waived. They created a $6.7 million trade exception there. What else? Traded the number 22 pick and Terrence Mann to Boston for Kristaps Porzingis, who's on an expiring $30.7 million salary. Signed Luke Kennard to a 1-year, $11 million deal. That was the non-tax part of the non-tax mid-level. Traded Kobe Buffkin. We hardly knew ye to Brooklyn for $110,000.
The minimum amount needed.
The minimum amount. That boy, what a saga, the Kobe Buffkin saga. It just really never got off the ground. Well, yeah. So signed N'Faly Dante to a 2-year, $4.5 million deal. And signed Nikola Jurisic, the number 43 pick, to a 3-year, $5.9 million deal. Only the first year of that contract is guaranteed. So, Dan, where do you want to start here? I think there's there's like one big trade, the draft night trade, and then sort of the accumulation of 3 starting caliber, but we'll just call them rotation level pieces to have kind of built a pretty nasty 8-man group for a Hawks team that notoriously tax averse, but is trying to win as best as it can this season. So how would you define their direction? And then what do you think about take any of those moves that you want to like hit first in service of that direction?
Has this become a cliche, but it feels like they're trying to straddle 2 timelines to where they clearly have some young guys they're invested in, but they also want to win now, and they're also trying to juggle all of that with, well, Trae Young is extension eligible, and as we're recording this, Trae Young does not have an extension. He's going to have a player option for next summer, so you don't want to get in too deep, like going all in on necessarily any one direction, especially when you don't know what's going to happen with Trae. However, because your first-round picks are going to be controlled by the Spurs in 2026 and 2027, you're kind of obligated to go for it, even though you've replaced a lot of that draft equity. I mean, the unprotected pick you got for dropping down 10 spots in the draft. And when you look at how they went about that goal, I would not only say they aced it, but they almost idealized, to me, the vision of what a team should look like around Trae Young. Because I think it's not just about, oh, look at all of these different rangy defenders that they have. You can say, look at all these rangy defensive players they have who are not liabilities on the offensive end either. And so there might be some questions about the secondary ball handling still, maybe the shooting overall. I still don't really know what Dyson Daniels is going to be on offense, even though he showed some strides last year. But you have a team that can conceivably defend at a high level around Trae Young. You've given him a real floor spacing big. And like the offense could also, it feels like the offense and the defense can peak at the same time, which is not something that you could, even going back to the Eastern Conference Finals team from basically a half decade ago, I don't think you ever could have said that about that squad. So I look at this and I say, they were trying to straddle a tricky line, but I feel like they did it and then still somehow exceeded expectations relative to it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that this is the first team we're going to talk about, and I'm going to sort of dismiss some of our criteria right off the bat. Like, whatever you think their goals were, and you have to factor in lack of control of some incoming of their own future first rounders. Sort of means you like tanking was never on the table. Not that you would have with this roster that has young pieces and is promising and is pretty good. If you just go down the list of the major transactions, starting with the draft night trade, like, that's just a smart, good trade. Like, the value they got there is insane. Like, we're going to kill the Pelicans for it. I mean, it's sort of like we're just, the horse has been dead for months, and we're just still kicking it on this one, I think. And everybody is. Like, this is short of Luka Doncic, like, is this the most universally like recognized heist that we've seen in just a long time, right? Like 10 spots of moving
Since
up
February.
yeah, right. Like, if you rule out that trade, the Luka trade, that this is one of the. I think the draft pick that Atlanta got here is, I think, pretty clearly the most valuable one to change hands this offseason, right? And it cost them a 10 spot drop in a middle of the first round. So that's a win, whether you're trying to be better this year or in 5, right? Like, that's just the value. That's the values right there. Getting Porzingis for nothing. Luke Kennard at that number, totally fine, whether you're just looking for help for your young guys now or someone that's going to be on the floor in fourth quarters potentially because you need secondary playmaking and shooting. Alexander Walker, we love him. That's a good pay rate for a player of his caliber that could start for you. He's not going to, but if you needed him to, right? So it's just like,
well, that's the other thing. They have 7. You mentioned like 8. Like, don't of the 8 guys that you like, 7 of them have a case to just start.
Sure,
which is insane.
And just again, to drill down on it, whatever you think Atlanta's intentions were, these are moves you make regardless, because like, well, if we're rebuilding, we don't want Alexander Walker at that number. Yeah, actually, I think you might, because you can trade him for positive value if it comes to that, right? Like, if you need to pivot into a tank, he's a valuable, you're going to get something good for him. So most of Atlanta's major moves, all of them really, just make sense regardless of what you think they should have been trying to do. Like, they're all ones you say yes to from Atlanta's perspective.
Just a couple quick notes. That pick, and this really just says everything about the Pelicans more so than the Bucks, who there's some variance, I think, in their best and worst case outcomes. But would you be shocked if that 2026 first round pick is not a lottery selection?
Yeah, framed another way, do I expect it to be a lottery selection?
Yeah.
Yes, I do, very strongly. I mean, like, I honestly think like the odds of it being a top 5 pick are pretty high. Just because like Zion goes down, the Pelicans are one of the 5 worst teams in the league. That's where we are, and it doesn't even that doesn't even need to be the thing that happens that gets them that low.
I think the other thing is that Zion could not go down, and the Pelicans still might be one of the 5 or 7.
That's what I mean.
It
does that would be sufficient. Like, if Zion getting hurt would be sufficient to get them a top 5 pick. It's not necessary. There are other ways that this could this could be such a high value asset.
The other thing, I know Luke Kennard can do things off the dribble. I might like to, but I don't know what the alternative was. Would I have preferred Tyus Jones here to Luke Kennard? Probably not, because at least Luke Kennard can play alongside Trae Young. But giving him $11 million, and now without Kobe Buffkin there, not that he was going to play a big role, it's okay. You really need Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, and Luke Kennard to do a lot of ball handling, unless you're going to expand that part of Zachary Risache's game. Again, just nitpicking here, and I'm going to follow it up with a compliment. You did give up on Kobe Buffkin, which in a way was a cost-cutting move, but because you just have those trade exceptions and now you're more than $7 million beneath the tax, which we all know that the Atlanta Hawks are not going to pay, they become a team to watch on the trade market. Like, they still have 13+ million, I think, from the Bogdanovich trade exception, and then plus the $6.7 million TP that you noted they created as part of the Clint Capella sign and trade. That's just really smart front office maneuvering. The one thing that I feel like I really could hammer them home for is, like, why wasn't Ansi Salah like just named like the lead front office executive right off the bat? Because this is a master stroke of an offseason.
It is great. It's an A. Like, we can dispense
spoilers, Grant, which is the entire point of the process there. But yeah, they were an easy A. I don't know like how much better it necessarily needed to be. This is I'm ready to say spicy things about the Hawks next season. They could be one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the Eastern Conference.
Yep.
We move on to the Charlotte Hornets. So we begin with, they drafted Concanipple at number 4. They traded Mark Williams and Phoenix's own 2029 second-round pick back to the Suns for the number 29 pick, which became Liam McNeely. Also Vasily Micic, and a 2029 first-round pick. That first-round pick is going to be the least favorable of Cleveland, Minnesota, and Utah. They then traded Vasily Micic to Milwaukee for Pat Connaughton and 2 second-round picks in 2031 and 2032. They re-signed Trey Mann to a 3-year, $24 million deal. There's a team option on the final year of that contract. They signed Mason Plumlee to a 1-year minimum deal. They signed Spencer Dinwiddie to a 1-year minimum deal. They signed the number 34 overall pick, Ryan Kalkbrenner, to a 4-year, $10 million deal, the first 2 years of which are guaranteed. And they signed the number 33, the 33rd overall pick, Zion James, to a 4-year, $10 million deal. That's also the first 2 years are guaranteed. Grant, what was this team trying to do this offseason?
Well, I think so. Charlotte, the pivot since the Jordan ownership changed over has kind of been to just focus on picking up little wins. It feels like, and not reaching, not thinking you're closer than you are to I don't know what you want to say, playoff contention, play-in contention, whatever. It's really just been about smart asset management, opportunistic trades. Like the case in point, there's nothing here as we're looking at the rundown that feels like it's not like a high impact move, or not anything you'd say was, we're talking about second round picks and salary dumps and like just little flips here and flips there, small, smart signings of guys that are like, I don't know, maybe they're deep rotation players, talking about like the Plumlees and Dinwiddies of the world to minimum deals. I just think Charlotte is trying to be patient, trying to be careful, trying to manage its assets, trying to accumulate assets that maybe there's a point down the road where all these extra seconds they're picking up turn into or facilitate a larger deal. They're just not overstretching themselves, and they're not chasing short-term gains. So I don't know how I would, like, in one word describe what their intentions are, other than to just maybe the word is like deliberate. Or like measured. But to that end, like they made just a bunch of little, and I don't use that as a pejorative, like smart transactions. Nothing earth shattering, nothing needle moving, but just picking up assets where they can, right? Like, and I think that's what they should be doing. So I guess maybe the starting point is I agree with their approach. You can't do this forever, but for now, I think it makes sense given where they are.
They also, was this not an offseason trade? Because I don't have it on here, and I must have skipped it over, so I'll add it in post. But they traded Yusuf Nurkic for Colin Sexton and a 230 second-round pick. That trade is still like one of the most puzzling ones to me from the Jazz's perspective. They
got seconds.
Right. They gave up the better player on the better contract, and they were the ones including picks. I think I've mentioned this before. My favorite conspiracy theory is that they did it so that Charlotte wouldn't take Ace Bailey before them. And that I would respect it if that's why it was done, but that would be a small price to pay. I would echo everything you say there. And I also just like the idea that, okay, you can look at this team and say, why haven't they done anything more aggressive at the center position? I don't think getting into the Mark Williams long-term business was going to be a great idea for them anyway. And there's something to be said about leaning into actual shooting around LaMelo Ball. Mm-hmm. Like his teammates, the past 3 seasons, Grant, this is where his teammates have ranked in three-point efficiency. 2023, the 0th percentile. 2024, the 18th percentile. 2025, the 18th percentile. So like having Con Knipple, Liam McNeely, Colin Sexton, if Trey Mann is healthy there, I like the fact that they have actual floor spacing and even secondary creation around him, to where now if Brandon Miller goes down again or has a down year, they're not like, they have other options on the offensive end to go about that. And I just like, to echo what you said again, I like that they're not rushing anything from that perspective. And so there's probably still things that need to be done with the futzing and fiddling of filling some holes. But I think that they had a really good, or like a rock solid offseason overall. And if you're looking for them to make this big win-loss jump, if they're healthier, maybe, but that should not have been the end game of this offseason specifically.
Yeah, I agree.
So where did you end up? What did you end up giving them?
I gave them a B. I think it's just like, I guess really you could give it an A just because they kind of succeeded in their modest goals, but B felt about right. Just like, no, I don't have any. You could criticize the man deal, but it's like, it's $8 million a year. Who cares? Like that could actually pay off. If you lose LaMelo for any stretch of time, you got somebody else that can handle the ball.
And he's been, when he's been healthy on the road, like he's flame throwing in Charlotte for the most part. So I think that's reasonable. I went B+. Like you said, you probably could bump up to an A. I really like McNeely and Knipple, but I think I probably just watched too much Summer League and went off vibes. So that could be trying to like cake that in there. I think the reason not to give them an A would be, I don't know if Diabate or Mason Plumlee or Kalkbrennan, like that's your center rotation. That's right. You can still not mortgage your future and have a better center rotation than perhaps the worst center rotation in the league.
It's pretty rough.
Who are we up to next, Grant?
So they drafted Kasparas Kuchionis at number 20, brought back Davion Mitchell for 2 years and $24 million, traded Duncan Robinson to the Pistons for Simone Fontecchio, dealt Kyle Anderson and Kevin Love to the Jazz for Norman Powell from the Clippers, kind of a 3-team deal there. We may talk about this one. Traded Haywood Highsmith and a 2032 second to the Nets for a 2026 second. Brooklyn's 2026 second has top 55 protection. So
Fake.
Real high
fake
value
news.
there. Yeah, fake pick. Signed Drew Smith to a 3-year, $7.9 million deal. The first year that's guaranteed. Picked up Keshad Johnson's $2 million team option. So not your, I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about this lately. Like, do we need to sort of recalibrate our impression of the Heat as just like relentless big game hunters, that this is a failure because they didn't go out and trade for the next all-star or something? You know what I mean? Like that's the reputation they seem to have. I would say though that like, find me the transaction here that's objectively poor. Like there's nothing bad here.
Oh, here
really,
it comes.
Oh well, the Highsmith one may be worth talking about, but like the focus for me is get it like Powell's not going to be as good as he was last year. Like that's just an insane out of nowhere career year at an advanced age. But for Kyle Anderson and Kevin Love, like, and this is Tyler Hero, by the way, just as we're recording today, ankle surgery. So any concerns you have, like, well, can Powell and Hero be in the same backcourt together? Not going to have to worry about that for a while. So Powell's just a really good scorer that they got for nothing. What do you want to talk about Highsmith? Is that where you're leaning? I feel like we should discuss that a little bit.
I just don't. I know he's injured, but he's on an expiring contract for under $6 million, and you needed to give up. This just proves that the Heat still don't value second round. A 2032 second round pick to get off that money, that's going to be a situation where, and we'll get to the Nets, but they're going to get a pick for him, and they're going to get a pick when they trade him again.
Right.
I don't. I know
that's the thing that like they're gonna. Why not? If it's if it's a tax issue or whatever, just keep Highsmith and trim somewhere else, because you know you're going to be able to flip Highsmith to a contender.
I think what the problem is that they really couldn't. They're not built to cut somewhere else without giving up multiple players, and Terry Rozier is just a non-starter. But here's my thing: you have until the end of the year, the league year, to get out of the tax. Was Haywood Highsmith, is the injury so bad that he's just going to have no value afterwards, and you're going to be saddled with what would have been a smaller tax bill? I don't understand the urgency of Miami to make that move. It was like, it's not unforgivable, but that logic to me was kind of baffling, is the way I would put it.
It makes you feel like there's something we don't understand, right? It's that kind of trade where it's like, what? That doesn't add up to me. It feels like, again, we regard the Heat as like pretty smart transactors. Like, what's going on here with this one? There's something fishy about that one.
And maybe it comes out that the injury's worse and the Nets aren't able to get value for him or something. But I'm like, looking at what he shot from three last year, the defensive workload he shouldered, and they gave up the second round pick. It felt premature to do that. And by the way, worst case scenario, let's say he's a net zero. You can't just send that same exact contract and that same exact asset into a team's trade exception or mid-level exceptions at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
You definitely could have done that. Otherwise, the Powell deal looks even better now because of the Tyler Hero injury. And as you said, Powell's not going to be as good as he was last year, but he showed growth as this player who doesn't need to play alongside another top-tier creator all the time. He shot over 50% from 2 and over 42% from 3 when playing without both Harden and Kawhi Leonard. And so, like, the Heat have Bam Adebayo still. I think Pele Larson's going to be big for them this year. But just to get him, like in general, for when an offense that struggles to draw fouls and generate pressure on the rim without Jimmy Butler, and he's no longer there and was barely there last year to begin with, that's something that Norman Powell can do. It's not the traditional from-scratch creation, but getting downhill, drawing fouls, bombing the hell out of three-pointers, and you gave up nothing and no one who was important to your short or your long-term vision here. And by the way, you talk about at the top, we view the Heat as these big-time transactors. Their approach, or more conservative approach, to not going harder after Kevin Durant, I'm sure they would have went hard after Giannis, but like, who else was available, number one? Like, they didn't need to be the Desmond Bane team. This approach was almost validated or absolved if you were in disagreement with it because of the Tyler Hero injury, because where were they going to go had they, let's say they trade for Kevin Durant. You're much worse without Tyler Hero if he goes down anyway. So I think, like, on balance, this ended up being a pretty good offseason for them.
Yep, I agree. So I gave him a B-. I had him at a B, and then the more I thought about the Highsmith trade, the less I liked it, and I just dumped him down to a B-.
I stuck with a B. I think the Norman Powell trade was like kind of that big of a steal, and it's also sort of why it's a good thing that they weren't trying to wait to like go after another big player because the Clippers like basically needed to make that deal to ensure they could get Bradley Beal. It felt like because it's not even you look at the Clippers end of it. It's not like it was a heist for the Heat, but it's not because the Clippers were stupid. It's because there were these other moving parts involved. The only thing that I could have dinged them for is I was for a team that claims to be prioritizing cap space. I was surprised that Davion Mitchell got 2 guaranteed years. I think the deal is fine, but that was the one that stood out to me. Now, I think cap space is officially overrated. It can be used in trades, but Grant, when's the last time you saw a player who's going to make an All-NBA team just traded into cap space?
Yeah, right. This is part of the apron era reevaluations we have to do. Like we got to stop fixating on, they got this much spending power. Okay, what's going to come of it? Because it doesn't seem like it matters as much.
So in my head, I'm like, they could have had 40+ million in cap space if Davion Mitchell's deal is not guaranteed and Andrew Wiggins opts out. And it's, well, one, Andrew Wiggins might not opt out, and two, I don't know that it matters. That if you like $40 million, $30 million in cap space, I don't know that it would make a difference for them. So I went B. Our next team up, Mr. Grant Hughes, is the Orlando Magic. They are my team. They did some stuff. Did you know they did some stuff, Grant?
A few things.
Or am I breaking news to you? So the big one, they traded Cole Anthony, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, the number 16 pick, which became Young Hansen, a 2026 first via Orlando, Phoenix, or Washington, a 2028 first, and a 2029 first. That's a swap, as well as a 2030 first to Memphis for one Desmond Bane. They drafted Jace Richardson at number 25. They traded number 46, which ended up being Amari Williams. Number 57, Max Shuga, a 2026 second-round pick, most favorable from Detroit, Milwaukee, and Orlando, and a 2027 second-round swap to Boston for what was the number 32 pick. They selected Noah Penda, signed him using I think that ended up being the second-round exception type deal. They signed Tyus Jones for 1 year, $7 million. That came out of their non-taxpayer mid-level exception. They re-signed Mo Wagner for 1 year, $5 million. And then they signed Paolo Banchero to a 5-year, $241.4 million max extension. It can go up to almost $290 million if he makes All-NBA, so that's the 30% language. And unlike Franz Wagner, Grant, he got a player option.
Good for him.
What were the Magic trying to do here, Grant? Can you identify that for me?
I think they were trying to do some version of what we and everyone else has been screaming at them to do for going on, it feels like forever, but really like 2+ years, which is you have to improve the offense. You have to find shooting. You have to find playmaking in the backcourt. So Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones, to a much lesser extent, address those things. Now, critics could say, well, a couple things. One, that's too much first round equity to give up for a player in Bane who's never made an all-star game, has like 160 plus coming his way over the next 4 years. And you still don't have enough shooting would be like the one guy. It's still not enough. Because if Franz Wagner is going to shoot under 30%, that's a problem. Paolo, I think it can improve there, but I don't think Banchero is going to be someone that's getting up 10 threes a game and hitting, 36, 37, 38% of them. Maybe that happens. But yeah, so they're trying to win now. They're trying to climb the East standings in a season where Boston, Indiana, potentially the Sixers are all compromised by injuries. The first two definitely, the third one probably. So with some distance from it, how does the 5 first-round assets for Desmond Bane strike you now today as a value proposition?
I think it's fine. It's not, a part of the value there is they got off the KCP contract,
okay.
So you were paying for that as well. And the other thing too is I think some people paint it as you got off the Cole Anthony contract, which I thought that was overblown, but also he ended up brokering a buyout with the Grizzlies, right. So maybe having the one guaranteed year left on his deal actually at $13 million was pretty bad. Desmond Bane can be an all-star in the Eastern Conference. I don't think he's the only player that they needed, but he is one of the exact archetype of players that this offense needed. And if you told me that the top of this team, and I mean Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane, Paolo Banchero, and Franz Wagner all remain healthy, there is a chance that the Magic just have a top 10 offense, or at least an elite offense when their best players are on the court. But what you said, I think, here is striking. They still don't necessarily have enough shooting. There's the shooters I trust on this team are Desmond Bane. I trust Jalen Suggs, and we can pretty much stop there. I guess.
And a lot of people, by the way, would say I don't trust Jalen Suggs. Like that. I agree with you to some extent, but I'm just emphasizing your point.
Yeah.
Like even that is like I don't know, maybe.
So, and I think look, the Franz Wagner jumper stuff, Eurobasket didn't necessarily help with the way people are going to view that. Like you said with Banchero, I think the efficiency is going to end up being so much better because of all the space he has, but I don't know what the volume proposition there is going to be for him. So this is not to like crap all over what they did, because they need, like, Tyus Jones is going to end up, I think, being pretty big to this team. I'm curious to see whether Jamal Mosley plays him, because we know that he favors the defense first players, but they still need to get, like, that's not it. You have enough creation and playmaking in theory from Wagner and Banchero and Bane and even Suggs, but you don't have a game manager to where it's just like someone who's going to put players in their spots or run more of like the traditional offensive stuff. And I think Banchero could probably get there, but like that's not Desmond Bane's game.
No.
Like that's not really Franz Wagner's game. So having Tyus Jones is important. I'm curious to see how much he plays. So I think that was a great signing. But sort of at the end of it all, the two things that stand out are their shooting, and then Grant, like the wing depth here is not great. Like you really need Tristan da Silva to be good, or like a Noah Penda to contribute as a rookie. It seems like the ship has sailed on the Jet Howard experience. So and that's a weird thing. You have Franz Wagner, you have Paolo Banchero, you have Desmond Bane, but like when you start to look at the bench, like this team is kind of like shallow-ish, or it's definitely shallow on the wings. You have bigs like for days. And my final, this is more of amusing. It didn't factor into their grade, but I do look at this as a roster that, they're going to trade somebody because they're within $5.6 million of ducking the tax. And with Banchero's extension kicking in next year, having traded for Bane, having extended Franz Wagner, I don't think there's a chance in hell that they allow the tax repeater clock to start this year.
No. So yeah, I agree. A couple things I'd add just on the Bane front. It's a lot. The volume, the number of picks. If you consider it from like an opportunity cost like standpoint of, well, what could you get in a separate trade involving two of those or something? Something. It's just like that. That is a lot of first round assets. But if Orlando's as good as it should be as a result of this trade, they're going to be in the 20s, maybe. You know what I mean? Like, I guess that's not always a fair way to evaluate outgoing picks. It's like, well, we're going to be good, so they wouldn't have been that useful to us. Like, that kind of dismisses their value as potentially being used in another trade. But that's something that persuades me a little bit more to the side of this being I think it was a good trade. I think it made sense. The other thing is, like, if they hadn't given up these picks or they hadn't swung quite as big and they'd gone and they got Luke Kennard, or like things resolve with Malik Beasley and they end up with Malik Beasley, I think we would be less excited about that, just because those are role-playing guys that maybe are on the floor at the end of games and maybe aren't. And Orlando's a good enough team with its core to be like, we kind of need a guy that's like a non-negotiable closer in an Eastern Conference Finals game, right? Like that. And Bane is that. So I do think like the level of this trade was appropriate. Like it needed to be, because they tried it with KCP. It didn't work. Going back to that, I think we would have, partly because of like they burned us last year because we loved the KCP move so much. Like we would have not liked it as much because it's like not enough, right? It's like a half measure almost. So this was a full measure. They went for the guy that cost a lot, that potentially helps a lot, even if we concede not quite enough shooting. So that's all to say. I think it was probably worth it. I think it was the right decision. And I can use that rationale to get over the 5 first-round assets.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, we already know what one of them was in number 16. And so, I mean,
Sure.
like, if they were not going to take Young Handsome, like,
No.
so if he turns into a superstar, they were never going to take him anyway. So what are the picks here with the highest upside? So I guess it's because the Phoenix pick is involved in 2026, but you're basically ending up with the second most favorable if Phoenix are. So, like, yeah, maybe that could be a high pick there. But the 2028, probably not a ton of upside. I guess once you get to 2030, I just think it was reasonable. But I wanted to pose the question to you. I don't think it was an A-plus move where it's like they robbed the Grizzlies. I really don't think that's what it was. But I wanted to ask you, would you have rather had, I'm just mapping out a scenario, what the Magic did, or knowing you probably wouldn't have had to give up as much first-round equity and had Kobe White, Anthony Simons, and Simone Fontecchio or Duncan Robinson?
I think
so. Those three players, maybe some leftover draft equity versus what the Magic did this offseason.
Well, which is to say Bane, right? Like you can have Bane or you can have
Tyus
those
Jones.
guys.
Tyus Jones.
Bane and I say Bane. I think just because those guys are all good role players and they do, like, you would have, maybe we wouldn't be saying they don't have enough 3-point shooting if you added like three guys that are kind of defined by the ability to stretch the floor. Then can't you just imagine though that we get to April, May and we're like, they can't play half these guys. You know, it's not enough. Like they just don't have another fringe all-star, maybe actually is an all-star player in
Kobe
in
White's
that lineup.
there.
Maybe, but White does make it interesting. I'd still rather have Bane. I think I'd rather have Bane. Bane's a better player.
I just think if you were to pick that, like, I was just trying to find an alternative path they could have traveled, and if you prefer that one, I think it needs to come down to Kobe White's going to be cheaper than Desmond Bane, not just this season, but moving forward, and you're worried about the salary structure. Otherwise, I think the high-end talent play here, though, and the thing that none of those guys who I named in the alternative scenario address, like Desmond Bane can give you some defense. He's not going to torpedo anything about your defense.
Yeah, that's implied with the idea that he's going to be on the floor. The other thing, I think, we'll talk about this with the Knicks a little bit, or this was something that I was thinking about with the Bridges deal. Like, yeah, you can agree. If you're a team at a certain level, like if you're a good team that's trying to get something above good, right? To where, like, now we're going to talk about Orlando as maybe they finish. Third feels totally realistic in the East, and now it's just a question of can they be higher than that, right?
And the answer is yes. By the way, if they're healthy, like they could be better than either one of the Cavs or the Knicks. Absolutely, of course.
And so I think when you're at that level, you almost have to accept that you're gonna have someone on the roster that fills a desperate need that maybe costs a little too much, like that. Like, and Bridges kind of feels that way. Anunoby for the Knicks, not to go Knicks on this, but like the Knicks are at the level where it's like you just gotta get the guys because you're close. And I think Bane falls into that a little bit for Orlando. Like, I don't know that he's a great dollar for production value, but like it's just hard to get a guy that's that good at this level where the Magic are and have it be a screaming deal. Like, you just have to eat that sometimes.
And I think the Mikal Bridges trade is a perfect example. I actually think you're getting better value here, even though Desmond Bane is more expensive, because Mikal Bridges did not fix the Knicks' biggest need, which was that second star / primary secondary shot creator. That's not what he's supposed to do. The Magic got exactly the play, like, of their priorities, like, this was the biggest one. He addresses some of, like, the ball handling creation stuff and all of their shooting problems. Now, if you ask him to go in the corner, like, maybe and try to marginalize him that way, things get weird. But what they also did, like the Knicks did, that's why such an astute point by you, the Knicks, in part, gave up so many draft picks because they weren't sending out anyone of value. When you go back, it was the Bojan Bogdanovic as the salary anchor.
Right.
In the Magic's case, not only were they not sending out anyone that was mission critical, they weren't sending out anyone that you could say was on a value deal. And in KCP's case, there's probably a lot of people that would argue it was a very bad deal.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about this, I'm sure I'm guilty of it at some points. Like, we don't factor that ancillary stuff in as much, or as much as we should.
Yeah.
So this is all to say we gave them an F.
Yeah, B's all around. And why is it not an A? 5 first-round assets. We think Bane helps, but maybe not enough, would be the short answer.
You didn't win the Paolo Banchero extension. It's fine. I think Paolo Banchero is fantastic. I would have given him the same deal, but
I'm giving him what he
got to
wants.
play. Yeah. So it was B is above that. Like, Grant, is B above average?
Significantly.
We're on to your Washington. Well, they're our Washington Wizards.
Yeah, they're everybody's. Yours, mine. They took Trey Johnson at number 6. They traded the 18th pick, which was Walter Clayton Jr., to the Jazz for number 21, which is Will Riley, number 43, which was Jameer Watkins, a 2031 second, which is the most favorable of Indiana's or Miami's, and Utah's 2032 second. They also traded Colby Jones to the Thunder for Dylan Jones and Houston's 29 second-round pick. Here's a big one. Traded Jordan Poole, Sadiq Bey, and number 40, which is Micah Peavy, to the Pelicans and Chicago's 2026 second and the Kings' 2029 second to Houston. This is all getting complicated. Long story short, Washington winds up with Cam Whitmore, CJ McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, later shipped out. We'll talk about in a second, and really gave up Jordan Poole and Sadiq Bey, and some seconds changed hands. So traded then, like I mentioned, Kelly Olynyk to the Spurs for Blake Wesley, waived Malachi Branham. Do you find it? So Malachi Branham and Blake Wesley, I was at a Kings game against the Spurs with my brother, and I was like, I can't tell the difference between those two guys because they're kind of the same size. They kind of look alike. They kind of do the same stuff. And it's just hilarious to me that they got traded in the same deal. Anyway, the 2026 second is going to be the least favorable from Dallas, Philly, or OKC in that deal. Marvin Bagley back on a 1-year minimum. Anthony Gill back on a 1-year minimum. Tristan Vukcevic got a 2-way, and they bought out Marcus Smart. He get back around $5.4 million. We love the Wizards, Dan. Go ahead.
I just want to make clear, because I said we weren't going to go into the two-ways. I think it's ridiculous that Tristan Vukcevic is still on a two-way, so that's why he was included there, because I just feel like, I know he's an important locker room presence. He's their Garrett Temple and Anthony Gill, but I think I'd rather have, be able to just play Vukcevic as much as I want, especially, your big rotation is Sarr. You're going to be married to Bagley after that, so I included in there as a passive-aggressive shot as to why I'm about to give the Wizards an F for their offseason.
What a misdirect by you. I know what grade you gave them. The big business here is the Poole trade, which, we should really just talk about, they're saving $34 million next year because CJ McCollum's deal expires. Jordan Poole's got that much on the books. So again, cap space is overrated. I don't know if it's overrated if you could have $100 million worth of it, which the Wizards might. We might have to, at some point, cap space is worth something. And when it's 9 figures of it, maybe we concede that that's a valuable thing to have. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what they do with it. We'll see if the number gets quite that high. They will be major cap space players next summer. We like Trey Johnson at number 6. We think he fits. I say we because I just know we're kind of the same mind here. He's the kind of scoring threat, shooting threat, self-sufficient offense threat that they don't really have in any of their other young core pieces. So those are the big pieces of business, and we very much like them. We haven't even talked about Cam Whitmore. You want to opine on him or anything else I missed?
That's the exact type of swing a team like the Wizards should be making. And I think the biggest criticism of them, we have to ask, what were they trying to do? And it's continue their rebuild. Mm-hmm. And I think what people could critique is they still don't know that they have the guy. Their best options at nabbing him or having him already is Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, if you want to throw Trey Johnson into that mix. I don't know. If I had to pick one of them most likely to become the guy, I'd probably lean Sarr at this point. I would have answered Coulibaly a year ago. But, what did you want them to? This is not a team. Next summer, when they have $1 trillion in cap space, we could have the conversation about how aggressive do they need to be in acquiring a best player, whether it's through the draft, how much pressure's under them there, or via trade or free agency. But, they made themselves more flexible. They picked up some assets, and the Cam Whitmore deal just typifies everything they should be doing. Is you gave up 2 second-round picks of... they're semi-interesting. A Chicago pick was involved. So, yeah, a 2026, it might be in the 30s. But Cam Whitmore is 6'7". He is not a disaster, a train wreck on defense when he doesn't want to be. So, the fact that you're putting the ball in his hands more, giving him more playing time, maybe he's more consistent on defense. But he can really score. I think the shooting percentage, from 3, that is something that is going to climb. Whether it's incrementally or materially, I think it's going to climb. He can give you some rim pressure, get out in transition. Just having that type of a scorer in a 6'7" body on a team that, by the way, just has a bunch of those different types of bodies on the I'm trying to figure. I have a free Justin Champagnie campaign going because I don't know. He's really good, and I don't know how he's supposed to play when you have Keyshawn George and Bilal Coulibaly, and you have all these sort of wing type players here. I think did they do anything that was earth-shattering? No, but that's also kind of the point.
Right.
And so, I really liked their offseason. I think that it was opportunistic, and my favorite part of it, I really do like Trey Johnson. I think that was the right selection there, but the Cam Whitmore flyer is just, how do you not take that as the Wizards?
Yeah, I mean it's a lot like Charlotte, really, right? Where except I think we're both our grades are gonna reflect this. The Wizards, like, I don't know if you call them bigger swings, really, because like the Whitmore deal is not it's not a big swing. It's like kind of a second draft guy that I would say he, along with Sarr, Koulibaly, throw Carrington in there, maybe even Johnson, like. Is it likely that those guys become an all-star at some point? Probably not, but it's possible. And you're accumulating as many it's possible guys as you can at this stage. And Whitmore definitely is that. I think he's at like 22 points per 36. I was looking him up the other day. Like, we could work with that, especially on a bad team where it's like he's going to get to explore the space a little bit. I hope, right? Because like, why is he on the team if you're not going to kind of see what he can do over some extended minutes? So, again, just sort of opportunistic asset accumulation stuff. I do think getting off of the last year of Poole's deal for McCollum, who's probably a better player than Poole anyway, just if you care about that stuff this year, probably a better veteran influence, all that stuff. Like, that's a pretty big win for a deal that's kind of like, well, we don't want this guy's contract. Well, we don't want this guy's contract. Shall we swap them? Like that's a pretty good win coming out of that type of deal, I think. So if you want to jump, if you have anything else to add, feel free. Otherwise, let's reveal here.
I went with an A- for the Wiz.
Yep.
You went with a B+. Justify it right now. Why wasn't it an A-?
They didn't get into the Giannis sweepstakes. I was just really disappointed that they. No, I think
it was the Tristan Vukcevic two-way, right?
Yeah, I was on your behalf. I decided to ding them for that that slight.
I think they're a team to monitor to where when we're having this conversation next year, I'm fascinated to see the tenor of it because I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to improve next season just based off, okay, it's cool that Ted Leonsis has let them go about their rebuilding thing for a few years. I'm not convinced that he's going to allow that to last much longer, but also you don't, and maybe they'll prove us wrong at the trade deadline by taking on a bunch of long-term money, but like you don't carve out $8 billion in cap space without an intention of doing something semi-seismic.
Yeah, I think like I could imagine us a year from now. The cap space does differentiate them, but if none of these young guys pop, we kind of might talk about them like we talk about the Jazz, where it's like, it's been a long time. You guys don't have the guy, right? Like that's a risk. But I would say Washington distinguishes itself because they're clearly trying to get the guy. Like Whitmore is a case of you're trying to find the guy and you're looking everywhere for him. So kudos to them for that.
We are on to a new division. Isn't that exciting, Grant? The Boston Celtics, who entered cost chainsawing mode, quite frankly. They are, we'll have this at the top, they are within like $12.2 million of ducking the tax. So everybody get just super excited about that. But their moves. Drafted Hugo Gonzalez at number 28, signed Joe Mazzulla to a multi-year extension. They traded Drew Holiday for Anthony Simons, created a $4.7 million traded player exception as a result. They traded Kristaps Porzingis to Atlanta in a 3-team deal with Brooklyn for George Niang, Cleveland's 2031 second, and $1.1 million in cash. They created a $22.7 million traded player exception in that as well. They then traded George Niang, a 2027 second, the most favorable of Boston and Orlando, and a 2031 second-round swap to Utah for R.J. Lewis Jr. In turn, they created an $8.2 million traded player exception. They were the team that traded Noah Penda, so number 32 to Orlando for number 46, number 57, a 2026 second, and a 2027 second-round swap. This is the big one, Grant. You are sitting down. They signed Chris Boucher.
They did
to
it.
a one-year minimum deal. And they gave a 2-year minimum deal to Luka Garza that was fully guaranteed, and then they gave a 2-year minimum deal to Josh Minot that has a team option on the latter season. Now, this is a very big and important question. I think there are a lot of answers that could be given to it. Grant, what were the Boston Celtics trying to do this offseason?
Just try to get back to the finals, after last year's. I mean, like, this is why it's. I think we would agree that everything they did made sense in the context of we can't spend $500 million on a team that won't have Jason Tatum and is not going to sniff a finals. Like, that's crazy, especially getting into the repeater and just like it doesn't make any sense. Ownership change. I suspect new ownership was like, I'm not paying this for this team. It's not going to be any good. So it sucks that like we have to sort of celebrate's too strong, but we have to acknowledge that the Celtics did well in their goal of cutting money, without, and look, like Tatum's obviously still there. Jaylen Brown is still there. There were nuclear options where Jaylen Brown is gone and Derek White is gone. I think they trimmed as much as they could trim without like hitting the bone, because there were ways to go here that would have been like full, just nuke it. I'm going to mix like surgery and nuclear metaphors because, it's been a while since we podcasted and I can't make sense. But I guess I'd just say it's hard to be excited about it, but you have to give it to them. Like they were pretty smart about it. They picked up a bunch of seconds. They did fine on their minimums. Actually, they did better than that because they got Chris Boucher, friend of the pod, Chris Boucher. I don't know.
He needs to be on the pod. Yeah.
Can you?
The true unicorn. Look, they got rid of one unicorn in Kristaps Porzingis and got a better one in Chris Boucher. I don't know, right. How's that not an A+ offseason?
And they're paying him a fraction of KP's money.
We do tend to over romanticize teardowns or cost cutting maneuvers. That's not what we're doing here. Like, we're acknowledging the reality, and they were able to cut a whole bunch of money. Like 9 figures worth when you're factoring in what they would have paid in taxes, without giving up a singular long-term asset. Kristaps was an expiring contract. I think a lot of people were shocked they didn't have to include a pick to give up Drew Holiday. So, given the reality of their situation, now, could you also make the case that if they were going this route, should Derek White have been someone they more aggressively shopped? Or are you going to follow through and get all the way out of the tax to try and save like that year on a repeater clock? But then what does that mean for next season? Is the mandate going to be, well, then you have to stay out of the tax too? Because if you have to be out of the tax each of the next 2 seasons, if that's ownership's mandate, then you probably should have traded Derek White this offseason, because it kind of feels like you're headed towards trading him next offseason when he will have less value. There's still time for them to go about these things, but given what their aim was, which is to position themselves to get completely out of the luxury tax, and we're looking at it just from this season's perspective, they are within striking distance. Like, it is doable for them to shave the next $12+ million. I'm assuming it's going to happen via an Anthony Simons trade. If it doesn't, I'll actually be like pretty shocked, right?
Yeah. Does the argument that this wasn't far enough because by the time Jason Tatum is back to being Jason Tatum, we might be talking about like 2028, just given that he's gone for a year, it's going to take a year for him to be all the way back to what he was. And by then maybe he's at an age where that he just can't be that. Were you ever tempted to kind of endorse the idea of like, it's got to be everybody except Tatum, and you start absolutely fresh in 20, what year are we even talking, like 28, 29 or 27, 28?
I really think, to me, you're just kind of having a should they have traded Jaylen Brown discussion at
I guess
that
that's
point.
right, yeah.
And because they already traded Holiday and so to me the answer is because it's like what I think the argument would be, if you wanted them to go further within reason without blowing it up, the move would have been to have traded Derek White now when his value is so high. So I can't, like, what is the argument aside, like, because if Tatum, we saw how Kevin Durant came back from an Achilles injury. So even if you give Tatum a year grace period, I don't know. Like, him and Jaylen Brown will still be firmly in their primes then. And I think while Jaylen Brown's, he did win Finals MVP, but you're not looking at him as someone who could be the best player in a title contender. Like, is the interplay between a 1B and like a 1A situation if Jason Tatum is less of a player than he was upon return? I would not have traded Jaylen Brown. And also, I think Jaylen Brown's value is going to be firmly intact, if not higher, because there'll be less time on his deal next offseason if you want to revisit that scenario. I view Derek White as the more urgent topic just because he's older, and it feels like the stock of non-stars is going to be more turbulent.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know where I land. There's some, to answer my own question, there's some part of me, and maybe it's just like the pessimist in me, that wants to say, this Celtics core, which I would include Brown in, like, it's done as a contender. Like, even if Tatum is back and is Tatum, just because like Brown will be so expensive by then that your flexibility is limited. It would have made sense to like just try to find the next Jaylen Brown who's not on his whatever it is third NBA contract that's just like exorbitantly expensive to be your number 2 guy after Tatum. But it's just, that's so much easier said than done, and it's not like you can't trade Brown for value like ever again. So devil's advocate.
We assume at least.
Yeah. Well, you never know. But yeah,
Does
no,
it? Does your? This gets into regrade territory, but what would impact your? Like, what would they do that could impact your your grade the most, or maybe even a? Well, let's get to our grades first. I think would we both give them a B minus? I gave him a B minus. You gave him a C plus. I think it's just. It was an above average offseason relative to what they were trying to do,
Yeah.
but it also feels a little incomplete to me because I'm wondering if. Like, they're definitely getting out of the tax, right? Because if they don't, like, let's say they don't get out of the tax, wouldn't you grade this more harshly on a regrade? Because it's then what was the point of just tearing everything down aside from saving the luxury savings at that point?
right? Yeah, no, I would. And I think like, no, there's no two ways about it. I wonder if like it feels incomplete because not because the Celtics like didn't have a will to keep doing stuff that just ran out of ways. Like it's just like, yeah, well, it's nice to want to trade, more money for less, but it's like at some point there's not like an infinite amount of resources or trade partners out there. So like to your point, it may just be something they finish later.
And my final question on it, if you're the Celtics, what would you prefer? So you could trade Anthony Simons and get out of the tax this year and get a player back who has money left on his deal beyond this season and can actively help you, or you're trading Anthony Simons for a cheaper player on an expiring contract who then makes it easier for you to balance your books after this year.
I think it's the latter.
Okay.
It's just like, because you got to finish the job, which is saving money. It isn't just saving money. I think for a team like Boston that I think will be ambitious again, it's like you're saving money, but you're, like you said, you're trying to get as much flexibility and spending power and optionality as you can for when you want to exercise it. Like with an interest in being good again.
We are on to the Brooklyn Nets, Grant, and they are your team.
They drafted point guards. We're done. And they gave this is going to be fascinating to talk about. They had 5 first-rounders. They drafted Igor Demin at number 8, Nolan Traore at 19, Ben Saraf at 26, Danny Wolf at 27. What was the 5th one? I can't remember. We'll get down to it.
Well, Drake Powell they acquired via trade.
Oh, that's right. Moved him. Yeah. The other, I guess the biggest transaction, if you want to call it that, traded Cam Johnson to Denver for Michael Porter Jr. and a 2032 first-round pick. I don't know why I said if you want to call it that.
If you want to, I was like, well, what else would you like to call
trades are transactions, right? Those are synonyms? They traded $1.1 million in cash to Boston in that 3-team trade with Atlanta for Terrence Mann and number 22. They traded a 2026 second with the fake second with top 55 protection to the Heat for Haywood Highsmith and a 2032 second. Got Kobe Buffkin for $110,000, basically. Cam Thomas, this was a staring contest over, signed his $6 million qualifying offer. He will have veto rights on a trade. His bird rights will not go with him if he is traded. He will be an unrestricted free agent in 2026. Day'Ron Sharpe back on a 2-year, $12.5 million deal, team option on the second year. Zaire Williams, 2 years, $12.5 million, team option on the second year. Brooklyn's goal this offseason was this is an interesting point of discussion. So 2 ways to evaluate specifically the way they went about the draft. Dan, do you think the focus on ball handlers is like not a copycat, but an acknowledgement that, hey, the Pacers had a bunch of guys that like could pass and had good court sense. That works well. So we'll just draft guys that have that and maybe play them at different positions and teach them to shoot or whatever. And we're just like, that's the new market inefficiency, guys with court sense who can pass and handle the ball. We just want them at shooting guard and small forward and whatever. We want point guard instincts everywhere. Is it that, or is it, we're not really sure any of these guys is going to be good enough to start at point guard for us, so let's get 17 of them and one of them will pan out? Which do you think it was?
I think it was the latter. I just don't know how because you can't you can't look at rookies in that. It'd be different if you already had like 2 of those guys on the roster and they've proven to be this, but I don't think you can take these unfinished products who haven't even played an NBA game yet and say like, yeah, we're like, now this is what we're building here. Yeah. Because no, I think this was a volume game.
It's a shotgun approach. It's like, you don't need to be accurate. The spread's going to be wide enough. You're going to hit something. Like that's kind of the thinking for me.
Do you support approaching it that way? Because I've gone back and forth in the sense of you should have consolidated somewhere, but then in the draft specifically, what did you want them to do? They didn't have. Would you have given up the number 8 pick in that New Orleans Pelican trade? Like probably not, because you needed like an infusion of a high prospect right now. It was a little too low. Like it was too high in the lottery for you to go that route, and then all the other picks were a little too low for you to get like that offer from them. So I don't know what the road not traveled looks like, but I will say that their draft approach was probably my least favorite part of their offseason.
It feels out of step enough with what you would normally see a team with this like suite of draft picks do that it's like, I don't know, fellas. It feels like, couldn't they have, if like Jeremiah Fears went 7th, like wasn't there a way to package some of this together and get him? Like, or just if your whole thing is we gotta get a point guard, it feels like that would have been possible.
I don't disagree with you, but I actually like Yegor Demon better than Jeremiah
I'm not saying Fears is the guy. I'm just saying like,
go get Ace Bailey somehow.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it just with this many picks, you just like a trade up. I'm sure one of us or both say, like, they're like if you're making draft predictions, is like the Nets will consolidate and move up. Like
what they should have done is tried to get in Derek Queen territory, like post 8. Like traded up for number 10 and drafted Derek Queen and then held the Pelicans hostage. That's what they
How
should
good
have done.
would we feel about the Nets' whole deal if they had that 2026 unprotected first coming next year?
And then like 2 fewer prospects on the roster.
Right, yeah.
Well,
the logjam wasn't there.
I appreciate the stabs in the dark here. And this is not saying like Nolan Traore is really freaking fast, and Ben Seraph looked like he moved well off the ball, and Yegor Demon played more off the ball in summer league than I was expecting. I don't know what the theory behind Danny Wolf. I just don't understand. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. I know next to nothing about Drake Powell. We didn't see him in summer league, but you get Kobe Buffkin. Cam Thomas is coming back. We'll have to talk about how that panned out. There's just a lot of guys on the, and I'm assuming Michael Porter Jr. will have the ball in his hands more. Are they going to send him home to be like a full-time podcaster at some point to just really juice their lottery odds? I worry about that. Jordy Fernandez has proven to be a good coach, but it's how do you explore the full depths of all these options here when there are now so many of them? It's uneasy in a good way because like the asset plays here, like the Atlanta thing, if you can get Kobe Buffkin for $110,000, a point guard who in theory might defend, put pressure on the rim and shoot. Yeah. Hell yeah. Go after that. What did you make of the Cam Thomas situation? How they went about that?
I think they played it right. I think I would have been much more negative about their offseason if they had guaranteed him like starter money. Let's not forget that I think it was Lucas Kaplan at Nets Daily like months ago had a quote from Thomas or via a source close to Thomas that he's like, I'm looking for 30 to 40 million a year. Like that's that was never going to happen.
Me too.
But
Me too.
Yeah, aren't we all? But I think it would have just been a huge mistake to pay him as if he's going to be a long-term starter on any version of this team. I just don't think he's the type of player that is worth that kind of money with what we know about just the value of things besides points in the NBA. So, I mean, you are basically going to just lose him for nothing. But I think it would have been worse to commit resources to him and treat him like he was going to be a key piece going forward. Because what this does do is kind of like empower them to make his role whatever they want it to be. And keep him sort of out of the way of some of the younger players that they want to develop. Because if you play Cam Thomas, like the offense is running through him. And so then what the hell was the point of all these other ball handlers you're trying to sort of like see if they can be something? So I think they handled it right. What do you think? I don't know if we talked about this.
I think that they could have afforded to have gone like a 1-year balloon payment, especially when you look at what they're going to have. Like they'll have cap space, but what are they at relative to the salary floor? Right now, I think they might be over it. Or
I think they hit it. They hit it. So what would be the point of the balloon payment? Like, what do you want?
Well, it makes him easier to trade because he's not going to have veto rights on it. Like, can you get in exchange for giving him more money? Could you have gotten him to waive his implicit no trade clause if it was a 1-year guaranteed situation?
I just wonder what are you getting for him?
Clearly you're not going. I think it was more so the. Like as a salary anchor in an expiring contract, outgoing in a deal that would allow you to bring back as a team trying to get rid of salary. Look, we saw the Wizards do this last year with the Bucks. So
got it.
I think they could have gone that route, and I'm a little surprised they didn't. But maybe we don't know what Cam Thomas's appetite was. Like if they would have come back with 2 years and 40, let's say, only one guaranteed year, you have to waive your your veto rights. Would he have done it? We don't know, but it doesn't even seem like they went that route, which I think is fine, but it paves the way for, like, you kind of alluded to this, for things to get messy, because if he's playing, the offense is going to run through him. And so what's the trickle-down effect on all of your other youngsters? And if you're not playing him, well, then why not just have renounced his rights? Like, what was the point then? Because he now has effectively a no-trade clause. His value to other teams is less than it was because they don't get his bird rights. So unless you are going to use an exception or have cap space, his offer for you tops out at $7.2 million next season. Now, I think maybe he falls in non-taxpayer mid-level exception range, so that would open up the scope of teams that could trade for him. But you made things maybe a little bit more awkward than they needed to be. This is all to say, I don't think it was detrimental one way or the other, but I think there could have been value in them saying, like, hey, here's $20 million next season. That's all we're going to guarantee you. And that might have been either a team actually wants him or viewed him as someone, hey, he could play, but we can also get rid of him after this season.
Yeah, I think endorsing their handling of the Thomas situation I think it requires you to believe that there just isn't a market for him. And I think I think you're right. There would have you maybe had some more avenues available to you if you pay him more and you get him to waive the no trade, because I don't know, who knows what happens. But to me, I think there's also value in what I think this feels like to me is the Nets saying, we are a smart enough organization to know that this is not a player that we want to prioritize or view as important to, like, the type of team we want to be. And, like, maybe that costs you some optionality in a trade because you didn't balloon payment or you didn't do some other structure. But, like, I guess what I'm saying is it makes me believe the Nets know what they're doing, because they just decided that this guy that a lot of people think, like, well, look at all the points he's. How, are you crazy? Like, I'm sure you could stat head Cam Thomas somehow and cherry pick something that shows him to be one of the 5 greatest young scorers of all time. And the Nets are like, we actually are smart enough to know that he's just not someone we can view as a key piece.
I think the only way you can hammer them for it, even though I have questions, is that you believe there would have been a chance had they offered a 2-year deal that he would have signed with a team, even with a team option, that, then the upside, he has a breakout year, we pick up his team option, we either have a player under team control for another year, or he becomes a trade asset. But signals everywhere around the league are screaming that the exact type of player that Cam Thomas is the exact type of player that teams are they're looking through the points. Sometimes even Jalen Green feels like a remnant of the past when you look at his extension that was signed last summer. Yep. Because is anyone ever that in part of it was trade motivated, but, like, look at what has happened with Quentin Grimes' restricted free agency.
What's going to happen with Ben Mathurin? Ben Matherin's very much in this player type. I mean, he could do a little more. You know what I mean? Like, I think you're right. I think this feels like a signal, and it just, like, you better be more than an empty score, I think, if you want to get that big second contract.
And you somehow, and this maybe isn't fair, but you have to be better than the second best passer on your team among the guys who don't really pass. Whatever his justification was. That was one of my favorite just rebukes. If you look at everyone who passes and remove them, I was the second best passer on the team.
He's a good agent for himself.
This is all to say, did we miss anything? We didn't talk about, grades. They're going up on the screen. We both gave them Bs. Mm-hmm. I think their 2 best transactions to me were getting Denver's 2032 unprotected first-round pick. And I know we over-romanticize those mystery box selections. It's not just about, where are the Nuggets going to be then? It's certainly about that. But the Nets probably aren't going to be the team that's making this pick. Quite frankly, like, that's a really big trade asset for them down the line. Michael Porter Jr., as a basketball player, like, someone who comes in, can shoot, and now you get to explore, like, his on-ball stuff. If he stays healthy and maybe proves that he can create a little more, that's someone other teams are probably interested in trading for. Like, this could be another quintessential example of, we got something for him on the way in, and we're going to get something for him on the way out. The Haywood Highsmith deal, we already talked about it with the Heat. Maybe we find out the injury is worse and they can't flip him for another second-round pick value. My guess is that they're going to end up getting at least another second-round pick in exchange for Haywood Highsmith. So I think those were the 2 sort of, like, smartest, forward-thinking transactions. You get these distant draft picks that will have value, maybe not to you as the team that's using them, but in future trades that you're going to make. We are on to your New York Knicks, but they're actually mine. So I will go through the list of transactions here. Nothing like what their transactions were last season, Grant. Do you remember that? They had
Thank
2
God.
pages.
That was 2 slides.
They fired Tom Thibodeau. They then hired Mike Brown, who was one of the coaches who we have details on his deal. 4 years, $40 million is the estimation. They signed Mikal Bridges to a 4-year, apparently very controversial $150 million extension. He notably will be trade eligible at the start of February, just in time for the February 5th trade deadline. They signed Gershon Yabusele away from the Philadelphia 76ers for 2 years and $11.3 million, most of the mini MLE. He has a player option for 26-27. They signed Jordan Clarkson to a 1-year minimum deal, which, did you see that it was Jordan Clarkson who requested that the Knicks sign him? Is that his agent asked him where he wanted to go, and he said the Knicks, and so they called, and so that at least shows players want to go to the Knicks. They traded number 50 to the Clippers for number 51, who became Mohamed Diawara, and the number 60 pick. And they picked up Ariel Hukporty's $2 million team option. We haven't gone through a lot of the team option stuff, but Ariel Hukporty might play if they're going to start dual bigs with Robinson and Towns. I do have a note here. The thing that I'm having trouble squaring away with their grade is relative to their resources and what are they trying to do? Contend for a title and deepen their rotation. I just nothing's happened yet, but it seems like we're headed towards that road. They have a shit ton of players on training camp deals right now, including Malcolm Brogdon, Garrison Matthews, Landry Shamet as the most noteworthy ones. The reporting suggests, as we record this, they have room enough to sign 1 veteran minimum and then a rookie minimum. The reporting suggests they are going to trade somebody in hopes of opening up another veteran minimum slot, which would then, the theory, is going to go to both Shamet and Malcolm Brogdon. I'm going to say right off the cuff that I'm struggling to separate this logic from my grade right now because I really think that it doesn't make a lot of sense. And you can sit here and tell me that the collateral damage will be Tyler Kolek or Pacome Dottie. I've seen Deuce McBride floated out there.
I was going to ask you, if it's Deuce McBride, you're not happy.
That's an F. That is maybe what I'm getting at is, though, if you're trading Deuce McBride, or even if you're giving up on the idea of youth who is cost controlled, it shouldn't be for end of rotation guys who, by all appearances, couldn't get a guaranteed minimum contract from somebody else. Yeah. Who, let's throw that out the window. You're not going to have their bird rights. They might just leave if they have a good season for you. So that feels too short term for this thing. If you're going to trade Pacome Dottie, this is the deal I've been floating. I don't know if the Wizards would do this. Give them back their first-round pick, which is really the equivalent of giving them back their next 2 second-round picks, and Pacome Dottie for Justin Champagnie. Like, that's the move. That's a cost-controlled guy. The Knicks need wings. That's the other thing is, it shouldn't be Deuce McBride. I also don't think it should be Pacome Dottie because at least he's a wing. I know Diawara is probably going to get the rookie minimum from them. Again, they've not done anything yet, so I can't include it in my grade, but I've put a pin in that, and I'm quite frankly terrified about what might happen because I don't understand the logic necessarily.
I get it. I think, it's, but ultimately, would it move your grade more than like half, from a straight letter grade to a minus or a plus or whatever? Like, I think, if it's McBride, that seems like a pretty big mismanagement.
It can't be. Like, if it's McBride, it's because I think that they're then getting players. There's actual. It's not just dumping salary, and so I understand that a Shamet or a Brogdon is going to help you more. They believe than a Kolek or a Dottie. It's just okay. Now you're punting on youth. You're punting on team control for how much. Like, I'm going to ask the question then. So, like, is the goal that they want to play? Their rotation has 9 guys in it right now, and so are you saying that you value going 10 and 11 deep that much? I mean, that's some Pacer shit, but the other thing that I don't know if it's talked about enough with Mike Brown, he's not like someone who embraces depth like way more than Tom. The Kings rotation was very top heavy while he was there last year. Part of that was roster construction, but generally speaking, he's relied very heavily on like 3 or 4 guys. So he might distribute the minutes a little more evenly than Tom Thibodeau, but I've never looked at the Kings and be like, yeah, Mike Brown's running like a 15-man rotation. You need this many bodies.
Yeah, I think just because of how it will feel like relatively, it's going to feel like Brown is going to the bench like crazy just because by default he will do it more than Tibbs did. I think I take your point. I would say too though that like having depth after a couple years of relying so heavily on so few guys is really just insurance as much as anything. Like whether with a healthy rotation he's going 10 or 11 deep, that's one thing. But like if and when Jalen Brunson has an ankle thing some Bridges is never going to miss time, knock on wood. But like you're just at least a little insulated, I think, in that sense, because all this wear and tear over these rough couple of years with fairly deep playoff runs, like somebody's breaking down, or several somebodies probably.
It sounds like this was a long preamble to me giving them a bad grade. I didn't actually. I gave them a really good grade.
Me too.
The things that actually stood out about their offseason that happened, going from Tom Thibodeau to Mike Brown, I assume the offense is going to be more inventive, but that's a very tough one to where I don't look at it as, oh, like they're way better because Mike Brown is going to be there. I think that he is a better fit for the offensive personnel just because I think you probably could have picked someone off the street and said that, or at least that person would have tried more shit than Tom Thibodeau did. I was very interested by the reaction to the Mikal Bridges extension, and I think John Hollinger, specifically of The Athletic, hating it really made me sit there and go, what am I missing here? Because that's someone whose opinion I respect the hell out of, and I just keep coming back to this is someone who next year he would have cost more than 150 million. Like he would have had to suffer a catastrophic injury to have not gotten this much guaranteed money on the open market next year.
That's the argument that I've been anchored to throughout it, because I think and the number that is forever in my head is 156 million, because that's the most he could have signed for this offseason. And so Knicks taking discounts. What's going on, Pablo? Get on it. Like
the $6 million.
But the $6 million. Where's that $6 million going? How's he making that back? But no, like we've been talking about this for a while, where it's like, okay, sure. I guess honestly, I can't say I thought this, but I could entertain the argument that like that's a lot of money for Mikal Bridges, the 150-ish over 4 years, but it never seemed like a lot of money because of what might have been available to him had he gone to free agency in a year, right? I forget you said it, 220 something, like the De'Aaron Fox level deal, I think, or something like that.
So another team could have given him 4 years and $213 million in free agency next year. I'm not saying they would have.
No.
But they
that
would
was
have given,
there.
Yeah.
It was hanging there. Like,
don't you think there would have been, like, let's even say like a 4-year, $175 million deal on the table for him then?
Right. But then, so I'll devil's advocate again, like, maybe that shouldn't be the argument. The measure of what a player should be paid can't be what you think someone else might be willing to pay him, except like that is how it works. Like we always say it only takes one, and with this player type, super durable, 3-and-D, just like this wing type, I do think the universal value of wings that can play both ends of the floor is not something I think that is changing in the apron era or whatever. Like a lot of things are different. I do think Bridges would have been a very good fit on you name the winning team that wants another starter, right? Like, so I think Hollinger, I read the same thing today just before we came on, and like, yes, I really respect his opinion. And maybe the case that I think he was making is like when this player type doesn't age well, he's not going to be able to guard fours because he's so thin as he slows down. When he's 33, he's going to be making a crazy number. I just think I'll circle all the way back to the Bane thing. Like when you're as good as the Knicks are, sometimes this is the cost of doing business. And also I still think this is like just a good deal because I think he was going to get more if you waited. So, and like if you view it as a trade value prospect, like I don't think you're going to be hard pressed to trade Mikal Bridges for positive value on this contract. I just don't. Right for now, maybe in 2 years that's different.
It tops out at 21.7% of the salary cap. And so I'm going to boil it down even further. As of right now, and so in all likelihood this will change and it'll be lower. He is going to be the 51st highest paid player in the NBA in 2026, 2027. Is your argument that he's that far away from a top 50 player in the league if this deal is bad? Mm-hmm. That's the thing that I keep coming back. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but he's probably going to be like the 55th highest paid player when this deal kicks in. That's fine.
Plus the durability, plus the plug and play, plus the demonstrated ability to contribute to a winning team in the playoffs, like all that shit.
To continue the devil's advocate of it, though, and I know that anyone who listens to this podcast religiously understands this is how I think sometimes, but couldn't you look at it reasonably and say, he's never had the major injury, so he's due.
Well, the Iron Man's only the Iron Man until he's not. That's true. Like DeAndre Jordan had it for a while. Klay Thompson had it for a while. It happens. But so far, like, I mean, if you're in arbitration or whatever, like the first thing you're arguing from his side is like, he never gets hurt. You might pay this much for a guy that's going to play 50 games. Like, that's insane. He's going to play 82. Like, even if his day-to-day production isn't that high, like, there aren't many players you can just count on. So, and then the counter would be like, well, he's going to break down. And it's like, all right. I mean, like, what's your evidence for that?
We can frame it this way. Kawhi Leonard got paid basically a third of this under the table by aspiration, or was slated to. Like, that's not, I mean, like, you get Mikal Bridges for like 3x that. That's not bad, right?
At most, he's getting 6 under the table. So I just, pretty good.
So what did you end up giving them? I went with a B.
I got a B+. I think given their resources, we didn't even talk about Yabusele, who I think is going to be a pretty good fit, regardless of what big you're playing him next to. They did what they could. Like, even it's even a feather in their cap that like someone like Malcolm Brogdon and Landry Shamet are like, yeah, you might make it, but you might not. Like that's a good offseason.
They got curved by Ben Simmons.
You know what? Basketball got curved by Ben Simmons. He's not interested anymore.
Like I said, maybe I'm having trouble. Like, I'm projecting forward on something that they're going to do that I'm not going to like. But the other thing this is not a concern. I think the Yabusele deal was totally fine. I don't know if you want Karl-Anthony Towns to play the 5 and then you're starting him with Mitchell Robinson, like the Yabusele Karl-Anthony Towns front court is not going to be good defensively. Like, that's just not
the spacing.
The spacing will be incredible, but I'm just wondering, it's just sort of what I don't think Mitchell Robinson should start for the Knicks, which is what I'm getting at. I understand the appeal of it, but I think that there's more like I like the idea of Yabusele and Mitchell Robinson getting minutes, which you can still do, but I don't know that I think what I've seen a lot of people talk about is, well, is Yabusele's three-point shooting going to hold? He was shooting really well in Real Madrid for like a half decade before coming back to the NBA. I'm more worried about, well, what does he look like defensively in some of the lineups that they're going to throw out? Still they got him to take less too, which gave them the flexibility to get the 1 veteran minimum. So a really good deal by them. I think they had a really good offseason relative to the hang-ups for me. Aside from what hasn't happened yet, it's just there's really no way of knowing whether it was the right move to go from Tibbs to Mike, or how much of an upgrade was it really. You're taking a risk. Like, your best player loved him, and you just made the Eastern Conference Finals. And we can all point to what the Knicks did wrong. We also know that Mike Brown wasn't their first choice. So you have to weigh all of this together. I think they had a really good offseason, though.
Yeah.
Who's up next, sir?
Oh, the Sixers. Nothing to talk about. So the big thing, we should lead with what has not happened. Quentin Grimes is still a restricted free agent. We also like the quietest of all of the big 4, just because we don't know what the offers going back and forth have been to the like degree of certainty that we do for so many of these other guys. As we record this, hasn't signed the qualifying offer. Don't really know don't know what's going to happen there. So file that away. We'll come back to it. What is done is they drafted VJ Edgecombe at number 3. Andre Drummond picked up his player option, is back. Kelly Oubre, same thing, $8.4 million player option. He's back. They declined Justin Edwards' team option, then brought him back on a 3-year, $7.1 million deal. That's a minimum deal. 27-28 is a team option. Trendon Watford got a 2-year minimum deal. Eric Gordon and Kyle Lowry both back on 1-year minimums. I guess the other things to note are Paul George had knee surgery after getting injured. This is just it's not a transaction.
Are we going to regrade the 2023 offseason?
It may factor into our a grade. And then Joel Embiid, as you'll recall, also had surgery in April on his knee. But I guess some of the clips that have surfaced, he looks pretty good according to some people. So yeah, I'm not sure where to go here. The Sixers' goal, maybe we should try to lay that out, is clearly they're built around Joel Embiid and Paul George and Tyrese Maxey, and they're trying to win. Like that is the goal right now. They didn't seem to, I guess, I don't know how you would have given their health statuses, but didn't shop their big expensive veterans. They're trying to win, and bringing back Gordon and Lowry on minimums, I think, further emphasizes that. So it's a weird situation because they have some youth, but it's not like they're building around VJ Edgecombe's timeline. So They're just a hard team to evaluate. I don't because so little of what we're gonna think and talk and wonder about with them has to do with like Kelly Oubre and Andre Drummond and that kind of thing.
I think because the Quentin Grimes, aside from drafting VJ Edgecombe, I think was the right choice. But like, the draft pick can't necessarily define especially at number 3 when there wasn't like as big of a question as to what was. I guess this year there was some, but Con Knipple wasn't in like the top 3 discussion. Ace Bailey, I guess, was in there. But Quentin Grimes is going to be like the premier move of their offseason unless it preempts other trades from them. And I think I looked at it and I like the Trendon Watford minimum deal is great. I like the Justin Edwards deal for them. I think like that was like a 3-and-D wing who flew under the radar a lot last year. I guess what you could point out as a bug rather than a feature, by waiting on the Quentin Grimes thing, you don't have clarity on your tax situation. And so could you have brought back Gershon Yabusele using the same tool that the Knicks did? Like, did you have enough room to have gone about that? I don't know that Gershon Yabusele is a big enough cog in their machine for me to sit here and say I'm comfortable giving them a D. So I think I actually like a lot of the moves that a lot of the moves. I like Edgecombe, and as I already said, I like the Watford and Justin Edwards deals. I think you could go like, I don't know why Eric Gordon and Kyle Lowry need to be here, but like we're dealing with minimums on those margins. I went with an incomplete because the only way that I think you could hammer them right now is to say like, oh, they should have like torn it down. And I would, my response to that would be how? Right. Who is trading for Joel Embiid right now? Did you want them to give up the number 3 pick to get off Paul George's salary? So I don't know what else, like what is the road not taken for them? Even if they had hammered out the Quentin Grimes deal already. So I'm very curious, like their offseason grade for me is going to be rooted a lot in like, what they end up keeping him for? So I can see this very much being like a B+ offseason from them relative to the resources that are available. But it is tough to divorce like their offseason from what happened last summer and is now casting a pale over their entire organization.
Right. It's like, it's very much affecting. I went with a C, and it really is basically like an incomplete. It's kind of a punt just because like, I don't know, we'll call it average until they do something with Grimes. And then
actually told me that you put C for complete. You saw my incomplete. You said C stands for
I
complete.
don't care what happens with Quentin Grimes. This is average across the board.
It's not fair that you got such a quick team there that you got to read through. And now I'm going to go through
you get a quick one too.
Oh, yeah. The Toronto Raptors. We're fine here. We love us some Toronto Raptors around these parts. So the Toronto Raptors, quote unquote, parted ways with Masai Ujiri. Do you think that matters at all? They drafted Colin Murray-Boyles at number 9, drafted Elijah Martin at number 39. They made Bobby Webster the lead executive without giving him the team president title, and had like the weirdest press release of it of all time. I guess it was a money thing that they didn't want to pay.
This just means they can pay him less if you don't call him the president.
Right. They then, for some reason, they extended Jakob Poeltl on a 3-year, $84.5 million deal. He picked up his $19.5 million team option $19.5 million player option for 26-27 as part of this extension. Grant, that brings, including this upcoming season, the Jakob Poeltl contract grand total is now 5 years and $123.1 million. Find you a team or just somebody who loves you as much as the Toronto Raptors love Jakob Poeltl. They signed Sandro Mamushvili to a 2-year minimum deal with a player option on the latter year, and then Garrett Temple is back on a 1-year minimum deal. What were they like? And I want to point out they didn't do a ton. I mean, the Jakob Poeltl extension I think cost a ton. They didn't do a ton because like Brandon Ingram is their free agency addition. They acquired him at the deadline. They extended him. But what was the end game of the Toronto Raptors this offseason, Grant?
Well, this is the problem, because what we've committed to trying to lay out is like, what's the goal, right, of the team in the offseason? And it's harder to say with any clarity what that is for the Raptors than it is for almost any other team, other than like
the Pelicans.
Just like the Pelicans' goal is to screw up, and they're killing it. It just feels like more of the same, right? Like from Webster being like the internal promotion, basically, as like the guy that's been there for a lot of the transactions that got them to this point, right?
Can I interject to ask you a question? I don't know what to make of the Masai Ujiri stuff, because if it was something about his vision for the roster, letting him go and then proceeding to do absolutely nothing to change the roster is weird. And then if it was a money thing, that can't make you feel good about what's happening either.
No, and I think actually what you're describing makes it seem more likely that it was money, because they didn't like hard pivot to someone with a different ideology. It doesn't seem like. Maybe that'll be proved wrong. Based on what's happened so far, it sure doesn't seem like the
Jakob Poeltl extension is proof.
Yeah,
it's proof
and really to Colin Murray Boyle's like really interesting player, does a lot of things well, is a weird fit. Is another guy that like maybe isn't going to help you as a probably isn't going to help you as a spacer. Does a lot, just some Scotty Barnes vibes in terms of just like, yeah, he checks a lot of boxes, but like, I don't know, how valuable is someone that just isn't going to get guarded seriously beyond the arc when he doesn't have the ball? Like, they just have a lot of those guys. So I don't know what they're trying to do other than kind of preserve the status quo. I guess if you're going to be charitable, you would say they're trying to see what the healthy version of this team they've put together over the last, I guess, 18 months looks like, which is like the quickly Barrett, Ingram, Barnes, Poeltl. Like, what can that be? They didn't tinker with that because they haven't actually seen what that looks like. I think you and I are both kind of on the side of like, that looks like a team that tops out at 41 wins or 44 or something like that and is hampered by spacing all year. Feels unambitious, feels uninventive, feels like, I mean, to be less kind about it, feels like banging your head against the wall a little bit from a direction standpoint. So this is one of the teams that kind of, for me, it really was always going to struggle to come out of this with a good grade because, like, one, I'm not totally sure what you'd say they're doing, and two, if this is what they're trying to do, whatever this is, like, I don't like it. So I mean, I don't know. Which of the, you mentioned the Poeltl thing. Like, can we talk like what? Why? What do we need to do that for?
So what's interesting is I actually disagree on the Raptors in the sense that I'm all for seeing there's just a lot of talent here.
Sure.
And there's a lot of guys that can do stuff on ball. We've seen that they've gotten RJ Barrett to do more away from the ball. Maybe you can do the same with Brandon Ingram. I agree with what you said about Colin Murray Boyles. The fit on offense is going to be hella awkward. Defensively, though, I think he could be really good right away.
I agree.
I think that this team could benefit. That's why I like the Mamu signing, is to have a floor spacing center. That would help them a ton. I think that we've kind of forgotten how good Emmanuel quickly can be. So I'm not as fast as some people think, well, you need to trade or should have traded Poeltl or gotten rid of RJ Barrett by now. There is something weird about this team being into the luxury tax. I totally agree with that. I think their ceiling is more like 46, 47, 48 wins if everyone stays healthy, because there's a lot of talent and versatility. What I take issue with is, I already mentioned the Masai Ujiri stuff. If it was financially motivated, which you and I both believe it was, that's even more inexcusable. If it was like philosophical differences, I get it. You've already proven it wasn't that. Or even if you think it was that, you don't get to then sit here and do absolutely nothing. Not only did you do absolutely nothing, you doubled down, and that's my sticking point here. The unambitious move to me was extending Jakob Poeltl. Why? What was the urgency? What was the urgency to extend Jakob Poeltl? Because he had a player option for 2026, 2027? Like, I just don't, like, what was the... If he picked it up as part of that deal, you think he wasn't going to be willing to do that like in June? I don't understand that at all. And so I think that this was an unambitious offseason in the sense of, you got rid of Masai Ujiri because you cheaped out. That's my read on it. Maybe we're wrong, but that's my read on it. And then you extended Jakob Poeltl when you didn't have to, when he is among the questionable fits for your roster, given how you fleshed it out elsewhere. I'm open to the idea that we still need to see this in action. I seem to be higher on the on-court product than you, and I still think this was an abomination of an offseason from them.
So F- is what I'm hearing.
No, I went with I don't even remember what I went with. I went with a D, I believe. What did you go with? I went with a D+ because I'm high on the Raptors. You're welcome.
You like the on-court product exactly 1/2 grade more than I do. I went with the D. Yeah, I don't like the vision. The Poeltl thing makes no sense. Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe you're right about their ceiling in terms of like the East sucks and somebody's got to win in the high 40s, and maybe they're it.
Even if you don't like their vision, aren't you at least open to them trying to see how it plays out, because we haven't been able to see it play out?
I think that's the best argument you can make in their favor is they don't know yet like what this looks like with these 5 guys together. And then like we're not even talking about some of it because they're not off-season moves really, but like, you know, what's Jacoby Walter look like? What is like Mobo and Shed and like Grady Dick? Like there's talent on this team. There's no questioning that. They're just continuing to throw Ingram in here. They're just continuing to pay guys that like, why so much? Why so soon? And how? And again, without knowing like if this player type in Ingram's case or in Pirtle's case, like can even get you to a level you want to get to.
Honestly, I would say it's probably pretty rare that a team that didn't give out more than a minimum contract in free agency gets a D, right? Like, what's the last time that would have happened?
Probably the Bulls.
Speaking of,
there they are.
What a transition. You really are a veteran of the show, sir.
All right, I'll take them. Spoiler, this will factor into my grade a little bit. Signed Billy Donovan to an extension and signed Arturas Karnisovas to an extension. They took Noah Senge at number 12. He got dunked on. They traded number 45, which was Rocco Zakarski. I'm sorry, it's going to be the only thing we think of until he does something else. For number 55, Lachlan Ulbrich and cash. They traded Lonzo Ball straight up 1-for-1 to the Cavs for Isaac Okoro. Lots of pretty interesting deal to unpack there. Brought back Trey Jones on a 3-year, $24 million deal. That's a flat $8 million per year, and 27-28 is a team option. And then most recently, they got Josh Giddey, restricted free agent, back 4 years, $100 million, fully guaranteed, no options, a standard ascending scale. He wanted what? I guess it would have been
30.
120 or 130.
Yeah.
They wanted 80, I think was their starting point. They met in the middle, although I have some thoughts on if that was actually a meeting in the middle. So, Dan, the Bulls' goal was to win between 39 and 42 games.
Yeah.
I think they've done a bang-up job of
A+.
What I will say, we disagree with their direction and have forever. This is the perfect offseason in chasing that goal that they've set out for themselves. Just terrific.
Yeah, I get it seems unambitious, but isn't that the goal of the franchise to be unambitious? That's why I've had trouble.
It's a hard team to grade for that reason. They're nailing it in terms of what they want to do. Here's
my thing. If you're going to be unambitious, you should have extended Nikola Vucevic. And for that reason, they get an F.
That's right. They could have done so much more. Is it too soon to extend Patrick Williams again?
So can his entire contract just be player options? Each year he gets to decide.
They renegotiate. You know what? You're in charge, man. You want to come back? Great. If not, Godspeed.
I actually don't have a problem with the Donovan extension. I don't know that we know enough about what he could do with a really good roster, but like he's done things like help them at points feel like the way they played on offense last year was actually highly entertaining once they so you moved on from Zach LaVine, you had moved on from DeMar DeRozan before that. I'm fine with that. I don't like the AK getting an extension, which we don't know when that actually might not even be an off-season thing, but it's being grandfathered into here. That's an F move because it was
announced.
Right. And so I like Asengwe, like having watched him in Summer League, like he had a few plays where it was kind of like, oh, all right, like look at him getting downhill with the ball in his hands. But I didn't love anything about their offense. I think the Trey Jones deal is really good. Now they just have all these guards. And if the biggest compliment, I don't know where to land. Let's start here. Where do you land on Okoro for Lonzo Ball? Because some of me understands it in theory because it's Okoro can play more minutes. They needed more of a perimeter, like attack dog on defense than Lonzo Ball was ever going to provide you. And in theory, they might have enough offense. So Isaac Okoro will hit his corner threes in the regular season, and then they don't play beyond the regular season really. So then who cares what he does in the playoffs? But I was also just sort of why? You got the worst player on the worst contract and you didn't get any picks for it. So I didn't love that. And then the biggest compliment that it seems people want to give is you met Josh Giddey in the middle. I just don't.
I think that again, the Trey Jones deal, I like that deal. I think that's objectively good. I think for the wrong reasons, Okoro probably is a better player for this team than Lonzo Ball is because it's not a playoff type of situation.
For the wrong reasons.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, nope, you're right. We don't care about the playoffs and the stuff that matters there, so Okoro makes sense. Who cares if he gets played off the floor because nobody bothers to guard him if he's shooting threes in the corner? Not an issue for us. The big thing is just bundling up the Donovan and AK extensions is just ownership saying, looking at the last half decade and saying, we're good with this. And that sucks. Like that's dispiriting if I'm a fan, because like this is boring. Who wants this? It's just I hate that we used unambitious for Toronto right before this, because like this is the unambitious team. The Bull, like it's a broken record. Like I don't understand the lack of desire to, like, whatever you want to call it, take a big swing, like do something different, peel off the veterans, start over, or like make a big trade for just anything. So I'm just so disheartened by the let's do more of this tenor of the coach and executive extensions, that like it's hard to get excited about anything else. And then on the Giddey front, yeah, you didn't give him what he was asking for. So I guess like in some way that can be framed as a win, except like nobody else was going to give him anything. So you could have held strong and said it's 20 a year tops, or take the qualifying offer. I do feel like even though they got down to 100 million, it felt like the Bulls caved. Like, I don't view this as Giddey caving, because Giddey had one team in position to pay him, and it was the Bulls. And he didn't really have realistic alternatives. I don't see why Chicago had to do this. Now, it's possible he's a positive value at this contract. I personally don't think that's super likely. I just don't believe in what he does mattering on a team that wins. Again, here we are, though. The Bulls are a team that has low ambitions, and maybe this is a value for them. I just think given what the market was yielding, which is nothing for restricted free agents, you could have held out longer. You could have dared him to take the qualifying offer. So
or could you have gotten a team option on the in a fifth year?
I don't view it as a win. I don't view it as a win for the Bulls.
And it's even if in a vacuum he plays up to the standard of this contract, the limitations he imposes on you from it, like let's look at what the best version of Josh Giddey was last year. Him getting all the way downhill, not bailing out on floaters, him hitting his threes, still not bringing anything for you defensively, still borderline useless is probably too cruel, but like not a threat away from the ball. And by threat, right, I mean, okay, you might knock down spot up threes. How many teams care?
Right.
They're not going to treat him like a threat. And the other thing too is, so now you've paid him this money. Kobe White's better. Like, Kobe White is just better. He's more plug and play on the offensive end. Has the higher ceiling as a shot creator. Is that your backcourt of the future, knowing what he's going to cost? So I'm not saying they should have went and traded. They probably should have traded Kobe White by now, but I'm not dinging them for not trading Kobe White. But that's that word again, is unambitious, as you've decided that these two are like your backcourt of the future. And if you're going to choose between the two, you picked the wrong one. Mm-hmm. So you're right. It does feel like the deal is not bad. And the process was, I say the process was okay, but it's also just, was it? Because it's like you said, they could have held out for more, and it's not, if he would have signed his qualifying offer because he'd been unrestricted free agent and left for nothing, so what?
Right.
So what? I don't know that he drives winning enough to say they needed to do this. I think it's just, if they were going to hold out as long as they did, couldn't they have, like you said, push for more? Or like, why not get this deal done then early? Like, you can't tell me that was he really not signing 4 for 100 earlier in the off? Like, what made you decide that you wanted to go up? Like, I want to know what changed. And so if they were going to do something with him where it was costing them $20+ million a year, it felt like it should have been more team, because right now it's okay if he plays up to snuff on this deal, like, gets to be a free agent again, like at the end of it, like you didn't get a player option, but you also didn't get a 5th year or a team option at any point. Mm-hmm. You didn't stick to the price that you wanted to, which was 20 at the beginning. So I guess they got the years they wanted though, because didn't they want 4 for 80? That's what you said at the top.
That correct? I think I remember it being, they want 4 for 80, he wants 4 for 120.
Yeah. So I guess I just don't. You already trying to play the leverage game, and I'm not saying restricted free agency is fair to the players, but it is collectively bargained, and it makes sense for teams to push those pressure points, and it's maybe they saw, because Cam Thomas signed his qualifying offer first. Is that something that sort of pushed them over the edge to say, oh, no, like we no.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's get to the grades here. We are not on Team Bulls here. I went D, you went D+. it's like it's not an F because you can make a case for the Giddey deal. I guess we're not going to make it, and then we liked some of the smaller stuff, but overall direction is just we hate it.
We're on to the Cleveland Cavaliers, another team that did not do too much. But what they did do, Grant, is they signed Kobe Altman to a 2-year extension. So now he's on the books with them through 2028, 2029. They drafted Tyrese Proctor at number 49, then signed him using the second round exception, a team option on that 4th year. They drafted Salou Niang at number 58. They traded Isaac Okoro for Lonzo Ball. We just talked about that trade. They re-signed Sam Merrill to a 4-year, $38 million deal, fully guaranteed, no options. And they signed Larry Nance Jr. to a 1-year minimum deal. And also, just as a note, Ty Jerome is now with the Grizzlies. He used to play for the Cavaliers. How are you? What was their goal?
Trying to win a title, man. That's it. Like, right? They're trying to win a championship. They were what did they win? 64 last year, number 1 seed, left the playoffs earlier than you should if you're a 64 win team. Injuries had something to do with that, but I'm going to focus here on. I guess this is just the reverse of the Chicago side of it. I think you're probably right if you assume Ball is going to play less than Okoro would have, and the risk of him just actually giving you nothing is probably among the highest of any player in the league, right? I still think it was a great trade for them because on the off chance that he is healthy in the postseason, I can imagine him closing games. So like that's where the analysis ends for me on that deal.
The other thing too, and I think it could be, I would agree, but it could be extended sort of like we did with Norman Powell just before. The Max Strus injury makes what Lonzo Ball does a lot more important, like the connective passing and the shooting, for sure.
Right. He is very much a playoff player in ways that Okoro is not. Like, teams are concerned about his shooting. He is valuable off of the ball. He's valuable with the ball, but doesn't need to be the one that's scoring with it. And good off ball good team defender, like, can help insulate both Mitchell and Garland. You know, just does stuff that you want from what would clearly be like a 5th guy, you know, in any lineup you have out there against really good teams. So love that. Sam Merrill, 4 for 38, no problem. Again, another thing that looks better with Strus being hurt. Just you still got plenty of shooting in the hole, and he's a better defender than most player types like him are.
Thank you for saying that.
It's just like the bar is low, right? Like we're comparing him against like the AJ Greens and Luke Kennards, and trying to think who else I'd throw in there. Your Buddy Hields, like that kind of thing. Like 4 for 38 for him is totally reasonable. That was true before Strus got hurt. It's more true now. I just like Larry Nance. I think that's a great minimum signing. I've always liked him. Can defend.
Speaking of players who risk giving you nothing though because of injury,
sure.
I probably would have, if we're nitpicking, I would have liked to have seen them, and they still could add a big that can, like, is going to be there. Like, we don't need like the Tristan Thompson human victory cigar roster spot. The other thing, too, is just they could have paid Ty Jerome. I understand why they didn't. They're in the second apron. Like, when teams are going into the second apron, or no, they are in the second apron. They're the only team in the second apron.
Yeah.
So you need to give them kudos for that, but you do sort of wonder, what's the ball handling look like in the half court coming off the bench now? Because that's not what Lonzo does. It's not what Sam Merrill does. Maybe that says a lot with how they feel about Jalen Tyson. We'll have to see, for sure. Tyrese Proctor, in theory, is someone who could do some of that stuff, but I don't expect the number 49 pick to be a part of the rotation. Hot take?
Gentleman named Evan Mobley might be able to soak up a little more of that.
Right. Totally a vote of confidence, but just if you're playing Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland so much together, you'd like to have a third ball handling guard come off the bench, I would think. Yeah. So, not a big thing, but that's where they had no resources. What they had was the ability to retain talent. They found a way to add, I think, onto their team with Lonzo Ball. The only thing that I think you can really quibble over is, right, that like third ball handler, should they have just sucked it up and paid Ty Jerome?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
What'd you give him as a grade?
I gave him a B, and that really is just an acknowledgement that I pointed to of like, the downside risk is you get literally 0 from Lonzo and possibly Nance. And so you just have to kind of price that in. But really, I love the theory of basically everything they did.
I went B+ because I think that highly of Tyrese Proctor, and that's really the only. I like the Sam Merrill deal, and I love I guess it's a trade that it was easy to justify for both teams in hindsight, but I really just, even with the risk involved, I like the Lonzo deal so much better for Cleveland. You got the better player on the better contract, as I've said like 8 times now on this podcast. The Detroit Pistons, they're your team, Grant.
All right. Drafted Chaz Lanier at 37. He got the second round special for 4 years for 8.7. You do. I did listen to the look ahead. You love Chaz.
Laz Jackson was not
less
sold.
so.
Who are you going to trust, Grant?
They signed Karis LeVert 2 years, $28.9 million. Re-signed Paul Reed 2 years, $10.9. Traded Simone Fontecchio for Duncan Robinson. That's a sign and trade. And Robinson his deals have always been weird, but signed a 3-year, $45 million deal. It's a declining scale deal. Only $2 million is guaranteed in 26-27. None of it is guaranteed in 27-28. So this is an A+ for you. Signed Javonte Green to 1 year minimum.
We should have dinged the Bulls for that. Oh no, the Pelicans had who had Javonte Green at the end of last year?
Well, they both had him at points. I can't remember where he was last.
The Bulls let him go at some point. They get an
F. You're the Javonte Green. Well, how about this? We just don't believe in the Pelicans or the Bulls. What do they have in common? Gave up on Javonte Green. They signed and traded, talking about the Pistons now, Dennis Schroeder to the Kings with a 2029 second. That's the least favorable of Detroit, Milwaukee, and the Knicks. For Charlotte's 26 second, top 55 protection, fake second alert. That created a $14.1 million traded player exception.
I'm sorry, can I be a nerd? Can we be a dorks for a second?
I'd love it.
That sign and trade move was brilliant. Like, you found a way to use the non-taxpayer mid-level and then still have it if you want to go out and make a trade in the offseason. That was just, I don't know that I've seen that talked about. I thought that was a great move by them. They got an A+ for the offseason. Let's move on to the next team.
So the Pistons' goal, as I've said 1 trillion times and written probably 2 trillion times, basically tripled their win total year over year. Their goal is to just continue climbing the East hierarchy, basically. They got a taste of it last year. Cade Cunningham arrived. They are trying to win. I don't think it's realistic to say that they're on like the Orlando, New York, Cleveland, whatever level, but they'd like to get there.
Okay,
so I think we need to view that. We're just talking Eastern Conference. The Thunder are their own thing. So we've got to view these moves through that lens. Like, they are in the business of needing to at least stay as good as they were from a personnel standpoint and or get better. And we don't, I don't know, maybe this is a question. Like, how much do you consider the likelihood of organic growth from so many of their younger players when you're evaluating like how much they needed to do in terms of like bringing in new bodies, you know?
I just, wait, what? So I don't understand the question.
So like,
are you saying they're banking too much on internal development?
No, I'm asking like how if you're evaluating the Pistons and let's say, I'm not sure Karis LeVert's that big of an upgrade and like they're going to miss Dennis Schroeder. I don't know that Duncan Robinson is better than is going to give you what Malik Beasley would have now. That's a wild card. Maybe he'll be back. Who knows? But like, does that matter if you think Ron Holland and Asar Thompson and Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey are all going to pop? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do we need to worry as much about, oh, these new guys are downgrades if you think their minutes are going to be small anyway because all these young guys are just going to be awesome? You know what I mean?
So, yeah, I actually think Karis LeVert's an upgrade because I think he's underrated defensively and he's more of an off-ball threat than Dennis Schroeder at this point.
An upgrade over Schroeder specifically.
Right, but to your point, what you're mentioning about the young guys, you have to find out too. And so I don't know where I land on Jaden Ivey. You've always been a little bit higher on him than I have.
Yeah.
But I understand that like it's easier to carve out a major role for Jaden Ivey if you have Karis LeVert instead of Dennis Schroeder. And so even if Karis LeVert ends up being a downgrade, you need to still find out and the fact that we haven't heard about a Duren or an Ivey extension yet, both are extension eligible, kind of seems like the Pistons are still trying to figure out what they have. Yeah. But that's kind of the point, and one of the reasons I liked their offseason so much. So there were two factors for me. The Malik Beasley stuff, the 3-year, $42 million deal that was on the table got kiboshed because of the federal gambling probe, and maybe he will be back on the Pistons on a cheaper deal. I thought they rebounded very nicely by getting to Duncan Robinson. You lose Simone Fontecchio, but he had a down year, wasn't in JB Bickerstaff's most important rotations. And what you've done is, I think you've at least held the status quo so that you don't get tempted to marginalize the development of your most important players beyond Cade Cunningham, of course. And I think there was a risk for the Pistons to look at last season, to look at the vacuum that was created in the East after that with the Halliburton injury, the Tatum injury. What the hell are the Heat and Bucks doing? And they could have really went for it. The fact that they didn't, I just think it's the safer call, but it's the smart call for me because you don't want to do anything that, one, either short circuits the development of any of these prospects or these young players that you still don't have enough information on, or two, put yourself in a position to where if they were making a trade, Grant, you have to render a verdict on at least one of these, like 4 young players in Jaden Ivey, Duran, Asar Thompson, and Ron Holland, because you're not making a major move without including one of them. And the final thing I'll say is, I think we also need to remember that progress isn't linear. So the Pistons could win like 5 fewer games, but if you now know that, okay, Jaden Ivey isn't part of the long-term plan, or Jaden Ivey got better, like, that's as valuable as winning like 4 or 5 more games than they did last season to this group.
Okay. I think I asked the question about like, how do you factor in the young guys? Cause I'm struggling with it. I think I mostly agree that like this sort of like, yeah, I'm not sure. I think LeVert is an upgrade over Schroeder, and it'll be really hard for someone, even Robinson, to come in and provide the value that Beasley did last year. Now, Beasley this year versus Robinson this year, it might be like, first of all, they might be teammates, and second of all, it might be about the same. But Beasley was so good, so valuable for them last season. Like that, just so to me, I'm trying to decide how much I think it matters that they're a little worse in terms of who went out and who's coming in, I think. And maybe that doesn't matter at all because, like, it's close enough and the young guys will all get better and you want those minutes going to the young guys anyway. So, like, the little bit worse that they are matters less because you're not going to play LeVert as much as you played Schroeder. You're not going to play Robinson as much as you played Beasley. So, I don't know. Well, let me ask you. This just occurs to me. Are you surprised we haven't seen much extension talk for Ivy and Duran? Like, do you think?
I mean, part of it is just like we're at the time of the offseason where when they arrive for training camp, I assume maybe we'll hear more about it. But Ivy specifically, how do you make any sort of decision on him? I just don't after the injury from last season and just. Okay, he had shown that he was improving as a second side creator and a off ball shooter, but. Like, is that worth $25 million a year based off that small sample size? Duran is that's a little red flaggy for me because I think he showed more than Ivy at this point, and just like he did improve defensively last season. We know he played more within himself on offense for sure. You don't have a lot of just other center I mean, you have Isaiah Stewart and Paul Reed, but Isaiah Stewart's he didn't play a ton of minutes last year. He was also injured by the end of the season, and Paul Reed he's Paul Reed. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. But I don't know. I don't make too much of it. And I also they're a team, like those players specifically, maybe not Ivy because he was picked so high, but would they prefer to work with their cap holds next summer and they know how restricted free agency works? So is that the route there? Now with Ivy, I think that he's going to end up getting less than his cap hold would be for, I think. I can't remember what Duran's cap hold is, but it should be lower.
I just
$19 million cap hold for Duran. I think he's going to get more than that. So,
and you think Ivy's got to be up in the mid-20s, right, or something like? What was he, the 5th pick? I can't remember.
Yeah, his is going to be more like 30.3. So
he's getting less than that.
Ivy, it just feels like a lack of information thing,
right? Yeah. If he's anywhere close to that, the Pistons are ecstatic because it means he popped. All right. Well, I don't know. Do you want to get to grades? I think we're a little bit far apart on this, but I don't think our logic is all that different. I went with a C. You went with a B. Mine is just, I think I ultimately focused more on I'm not, again, flashing neon signs. C is not bad. C is fine. And that's just kind of how I view the swap of LeVert and Robinson for Beasley and Schroeder under the circumstances.
I think it was a B because I'm caking in that there was a temptation for them to do more and they didn't, which I just respect. And by the way, the other thing too is, this isn't part of my grade, and you kind of already alluded to this, there's a chance that the whole Beasley drama ends with them going from Schroeder and Beasley, Schroeder, Beasley, and Fontecchio to Karis LeVert, Duncan Robinson, and Beasley, which I think that's an upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that this might really work out well for the Pistons, ironically, because they'll just get Beasley for a third of what they were going to have to pay him, and maybe he'll be as good as he was last year. Although again, I think that's going to be hard to beat.
We're on to the Indiana Pacers. This is rough. They do not have Miles Turner anymore. We should start there. But they signed Rick Carlisle to a multi-year extension. They drafted Taylor Peter at number 54. They traded Sacramento's 2030 second round pick and $2.5 million in cash to the Spurs for number 38, which they used on Cam Jones. He signed with the second round exception, team option on that fourth season. They traded Portland's 2029 second round pick and a 2031 second round swap for Jay Huff. Grant, do we give the A+ right now, or are we just like, what do we do? Do we move on from there? What did they also do? They re-signed Isaiah Jackson to a 3-year, $21 million deal, declining scale, fully guaranteed. They re-signed James Wiseman to a 2-year minimum deal, team option on the second season. And probably, honestly, the most mission-critical deal thing they did of all was picked up Tony Bradley's $2.9 million team option. Where are you at with this team, Grant?
Well, what was their goal, Dan? Let's establish that.
To tread water in the absence of Tyrese Halliburton, right? Not to,
yeah.
They kind of know they're not getting back to the finals. And by the way, I don't know how they reacquired their own pick for this coming season, but they did it like while they were still playing basketball, even though with some other teams this offseason. Did you factor that in at all?
I know, but I did have a morbid thought about that. Like, did they know that Halliburton's Achilles was just like a time bomb? Like, did they have information? Of course not. But like, boy, that worked out well for a gap year. Like that's, you want the player to be healthy, but if he's not going to be healthy, having the safety net of that pick is pretty sweet. So I guess I'm really just focused on Miles Turner leaving for what Jake Fisher reported was a refusal on Indiana's part to pay more than $22 million a year. I think there have been other numbers out there, but I'm very much anchored to that. The Bucks swoop him up for 4 for 107, 108. I just think that sucks. I think if I'm a Pacers fan, I'm really like, I think Miles Turner's worth what he got from the Bucks. One,
yep,
he's certainly worth more than what the Pacers were offering him. So it's such a disappointing, I don't know, cowardly, like whatever word you want to use, to let a starting center on a finals team go, even if he sucked in the finals, over a couple $1 million because you don't want to spend it. I hate it. That's the beginning and end of my Pacers offseason analysis.
That is why the offseason is so bad. You hit on it right at the end, because they were willing to go to X and he ends up getting a few $1 million more. It wasn't that they went into the offseason and decided this Tyrese Halliburton injury is going to force us into a wholesale pivot. Your cutoff point was too low, and you mentioned how bad he was in the finals. I've seen the shooting numbers when Tyrese Halliburton's off the court. The entire reason you bring back Miles Turner is to have him on the court when Tyrese Halliburton is there. And it wasn't about this coming season. We could talk about the tax, but then that gets into, well, then John Hollinger had pointed this out. We went against him on the Mikal Bridges stuff, but he said the Pacers shouldn't have extended Andrew Nembhard as early as they did, because they would have had another year of very cost-controlled money that would have, in theory, allowed them to pay Miles Turner, duck the tax this year. That's something to consider in hindsight. But, like, you just made the finals. And if you're trying to keep the idea of, because what does that say to you that Miles Turner is gone? How are you planning on getting back to that NBA Finals level with what's left in place at the center rotation, which is now Isaiah Jackson, who's coming off an Achilles injury, James Wiseman, who's coming off an Achilles injury. I guess you could play, I'm intrigued by like the Obi Toppin and Pascal Siakam front court of it all. Those minutes with them together, even without Tyrese Halliburton, were actually really good last season. Jay Huff is good. You can't play as aggressively on defense with him, and he's a per minute darling, in part because he doesn't play a lot of minutes.
Right.
And him being billed as like, oh, he was in the rotation of like a good Memphis Grizzlies team for like a second.
Yeah.
The latter 2/3 of the season, he basically wasn't in the rotation. I'm not saying, look, the Jay Huff trade was actually good. He's not a Miles Turner replacement. No. He's like a facsimile of a facsimile of a facsimile of Miles Turner. And he's 27, so I don't know, or 28. Tony East actually corrected me when I called him 27 the other day. So I don't know what the upside is there. Again, a good trade. You know what, it would have looked even better? If you still had Miles Turner on the roster, because now you have Miles Turner and another cost-controlled, floor-spacing, rim-protecting center. Like, imagine Jay Huff is like, rather than the idea of, well, should he start, as Miles Turner's backup.
Mm-hmm. Weird, right? I mean, we can like Jay Huff and think he's an interesting player, and still, but to say that, like, well, I don't know. I think there are people that would say Jay Huff can be 85%, 80% of what Miles Turner was in the same size role, and he's a
can't.
tenth of the cost. He can't do that.
I won't.
And if you think he can do that, point out to me like what in J Huff's history suggests that is possible. Like I like J Huff. I think he's an interesting player. I think he has the potential to be a really good backup. He's just never been more than that, and it's not like he's 22. So I just like, again,
the other
just
thing too, Grant,
the big picture is just like you can't lose a starter on a finals team who's still good and is almost unique in terms of skill set, right? Like a skeleton key of a player for your offense over a couple $1 million a year. Like that, you're going to have to really persuade me how that's anything other than a just disaster.
And by the way, the two things, Miles, like there are, now that Brook Lopez is just like super old, how many players,
that's
the floor spacing group, there's Miles Turner, there's Kristaps Porzingis. Who are we
Quinn
forgetting?
Post. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Quinn Post. Should have said him first. It's been too long.
Chris Boucher,
obviously. Duop Reith, if we're going to run through the podcast favorites.
Duop Reith, yeah. I'm just going to throw Young Hansen in there, Young Handsome. So, but like that's it. So my other thing, it's more of a question that it didn't factor in my grade. Would you have been more persuaded by this had the Pacers leaned into a gap year of we're going to maximize the value? Like right now, they don't need anything else to happen, another injury, to where it looked like they were just telegraphed. I don't know what that would have looked like. I'm not saying they should have traded Siakam, but where it would have been, they're clearly just trying to be bad next year. Would that have made the Miles Turner decision look any better?
I mean, if it's, well, I guess if it looked like more of a concerted plan to like, we have a plan, we're going to retool really hard in this way, but like, they have too many good players to like really pull that off, because you're going to have to get rid of Nesmith and Nembhard and and Siakam and Top. And it's just like, by the way, though, to the Nembhard thing, I still just think that's a great deal for him. I don't care that it made it so you didn't have the $2 million. No, if you needed to duck the tax, trade Toppin, trade Matherin. Like there's other ways to do this. Yep. Nembhard is on a great deal. Like I'm kind of done discussing. I
didn't mean to besmirch his value as a player. I'm just saying.
I know. It's just I'm not persuaded by Hollinger on that one. I'll say.
Look, I like the Rick Carlisle extension. He's done great things, and we like Jay Huff, but we're both in agreement that this offseason for the Pacers, even knowing what their goals are, it's an F. And maybe Isaiah Jackson has a breakout year coming off an Achilles. I like Isaiah Jackson, but a lot of the stuff he does seems like it's predicated on having not torn his Achilles. But we will see. Our final team, right? Last team, the Milwaukee Bucks. You want to take us through their transactions, sir?
Sure. Drafted Bogoljo Markovic at number 47. That's a name I've not said before. I think I got it right. Signed John Horst to a multi-year extension. Re-signed Bobby Portis to 3 years, $43.6 million. The player option is, 2027-28 is a player option. Waived and stretched one Damian Lillard. 2 years, $116 million left. They will pay Damian Lillard $22.5 million every year until 29-30. They traded Pat Connaughton for Vasilija Micic, bought him out, then waived and stretched. That's a slightly smaller $667,000 every year through 27-28. That's the kind of wave and stretch you want to do if you can pick and choose. They signed Miles Turner. Spent some time talking about him a moment ago. 4 years, $108.9 million. 28-29 is a player option. He's got a 15% trade kicker. Several minimums to get through here. Oh, no, not quite yet. Kevin Porter Jr. got a 2 year, $10.5 million deal, player option on the second year. Gary Trent Jr., 2 years, $7.6 million, also player option second year. Taurean Prince, 2 years, 7.1. Jericho Sims, 2 years, player options on the end of both of those. This is player option palooza here. Gary Harris, 2 years, $7.5 million, player option. Ryan Rollins back 3 years, $12 million. That's a flat 4 per year, player option. Last year, that deal. Cole Anthony has bounced around a little bit from Orlando to Memphis for 5 seconds, waived there. He got a 1 year minimum. I kind of sneaky like that. As like, why not for the Bucks? And I know you're holding your breath. Thanasis back on a 1 year minimum, and Chris Livingston.
The signal that Giannis was staying, and I think I'm going to break in. The question is, what were the Bucks trying to do? And the answer was keep Giannis Antetokounmpo. And here's the thing, because I think we're going to run into a lot of people calling hypocrisy when we talk about what the Suns did with Bradley Beal versus the Bucks with Damian Lillard. your end goal was to buy another year with Giannis, so that here's what you can do is hope that you're either good enough for him to just want to stay, or next summer, as of right now, they'll have the ability to trade 3 first-round picks. Kyle Kuzma will be an expiring contract. You have him. You have Miles Turner. They were creative with I'm looking more at the Gary Trent Jr. thing. Like, now you have his early bird rights next summer if you need him. There's a ton of flexibility here. But the main thing is, I don't trust like the perimeter depth here. It feels like they need another creator. I don't trust the Cole Anthony or Kevin Porter Jr. in that role. But you bought yourself another year with Giannis. And I'm sorry, you can set the $22.5 million on fire for a half decade, like regardless of what you did. Was Damian Lillard was going to give you a zero at 50 plus million per year. You now turn that into Miles Turner, other flexibility. And I also look, $22.5 million, like that's a lot of dead money. I'm not saying it's not. If you trade Giannis, how long is it going to take for you to be in a position to where that dead money is going to bother you? You're already ticking 1 year off because of this upcoming season. If you trade Giannis next summer, you're not going to be really good and in a position to where you need that flexibility for at least 4 years anyway, probably.
So it sounds like you're answering what to me is the most interesting question here, which is,
why did Bobby Portis get a player option? I don't know.
Well, that's a good deal for Bobby Portis, which is the goal we agree was keep Giannis. And the question to me that's most interesting is that the right goal for this team? I've gone back and forth because there's a cold side of the analysis here that is absolutely not. You're not contending ever again because that's the cost of contending for a long time and winning a title with a player like Giannis is you can't do it forever. So the cold side is to say, this is done. We could have some decent seasons. We're never going to win another title before Giannis gets way past his prime. So we should trade him and we should start all over. Like I that's not just like a straw man argument. I think I've probably made that argument. I think plenty of people have looked at the situation and said, like, that's just, if you want to be realistic about this, this is the way forward for Milwaukee. Like, what are you doing? I think I've come around to, like, if you have a player as great as Giannis and he's brought you a title and he still gives a shit, which he clearly does, and he's still close enough to being like apex Giannis that, like, I don't know, maybe you make a conference finals. Who knows? Like, I think the right decision to me is to just do what it takes to keep him. Do you? It seems like you agree with that. Like, you gotta.
I think you want to know why, to me, it's not even a question. You don't control your own first round pick again until 2031. What is unless you were going to get your picks back, which that would have been super complicated because of how many teams own them. Trading, like, how valuable would the draft equity need to be? No, you might have been compelled to trade him for like a package built around immediate talent, which is always just a risky gambit when you're moving your entire
you trade
franchise.
Them to the Warriors or whoever, or Miami, and you get every pick they have, and that's like pretty good. But like we always talk about, like, you really just want your own picks back in this situation. I would say too, Giannis is one of, like, what would you say, like 4 or 5 guys where the argument I'm making that you just keep him and you deal with it is how I feel. I think the vast majority of even like all NBA guys, I just think like you do just start over, but he's in that rarefied air of like brought a title, won MVPs, wants to be there. You're not a big market team. Like all the factors are like, yeah, he's an exception to the rule that you do just keep throwing good money after bad because like you're never going to have a Giannis again. So like you just need to, it's the exception. So to that end, like pretty good offseason. Like they did what they could with what they had.
I think what you do have to factor in is the opportunity cost and also just the risk involved. It's not an A+ move what they did. They get an A for creativity, or they get an A for guts. That's
resourcefulness. For sure. Like they did what they could.
But like with the flexibility, why was there not more of an emphasis on getting like a tried and true ball handler in here? I think Miles Turner, like you also did lose Brook Lopez here. And so it's just like Miles Turner's an upgrade. He's going to be more athletic than Brook Lopez. I think you could do some more aggressive things defensively with him for sure. But everything wasn't a home run. There's a risk involved, but I mean, like, just to get to the grades here, I went with a B. You went with a C+. An above average offseason when you waived and stretched the $160 million left on Damian Lillard. Like, that's an accomplishment. And it's more so like I could easily see them us doing a regrade and looking back saying, if Giannis is still here, re-signs, like we didn't give this a high enough grade. I don't know how good they're going to be in the context of the Eastern Conference. I worry about the offense. Like I think they have a chance to be really good defensively. The Ryan Rollins deal, excellent piece of business for them. Maybe you get enough shooting, like having Gary Trent Jr. there, but like the fact that Kyle Kuzma might be their second option or Kevin Porter Jr. might be their second, I don't feel great about it. And if you were going to go to the lengths that you did to keep Giannis, but like that money that you have on your books now from the Damian Lillard wave and stretch, you would have liked to have seen them address that a little more capably. But what they did do, now they're all player options, but they're all cheap enough that you could get rid of them probably. You're super flexible next offseason as well. And so Turner is one of, we went through the definitive list, which like the real list was Turner, Porzingis, and Chris Boucher were the only bigs that are like perfect fits next to Giannis. You got one of those three. Because like Brook Lopez is no longer perfect in that regard.
He's a backup now probably, right? Like I mean,
or even if he's not, and even if you want to add him to the list, there's still like only 5 guys on it at most. Yeah. So, and by the way, the Turner deal, like 4 for 1, sure. Like that's not even a bad deal. It's not like, oh, they had to give him $30 million a year.
Mm-hmm. Well, because when you say like, well, what's a comp for him? It's like there's 2 in the league, and one of
Chris
them's
Boucher
hurt all the
and
time.
Dwap Reith, and that's it.
They're just like, yeah. So again, yeah, I think you said it right up front. Like getting above average grades in an off season where you just burned $116 million and basically like have not quite a starter's salary in dead money every year for the next 5. Like the Bucks, they came out of this as well as you could given what they had available resource wise.
You have anything else? Or are you ready to take us out of here?
I think that's more than enough from
under 3 hours. Look at us.
I wonder what last year was. It was probably pretty close. Might have been
one of ours was 3 hours. I think it might have been the West.
That's stupid.
Yeah. We'll go 4 when we do the West this year. Don't worry.
Yeah, not enough. Thanks everybody for listening, for watching. Rate, review, subscribe, do all those things. On the YouTubes, you know what, Dan? I did give hype points.
Good.
I gave it to I think it was the Blazers podcast. So
just the Blazers. Shout out to Tara and Rose. Apparently, no one else gets hype points.
I don't understand the hype thing. I don't think is there a finite amount of hype that I'm allowed to.
I think per video you can hype it once, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, well, I'm gonna hype it all. I'm gonna hype all of them. What else? It feels like it's been forever since I got to do this. What else do I usually say, Dan?
Subscribe,
links for
maybe
something. Subscribe, YouTube, podcast, Discord, podcast description. Oh yeah, that's enough.
Oh, over under competition going to be starting up probably in
yes.
October. So join the Discord for that.
Where's the link for that, Dan? YouTube and podcast description. There, I remembered to say that.
I hype that. I hype it. No, yeah. I no longer fave it. I hype it.
Can we hype things just in general? Hype the West grades when we do those, I guess, in a week or so. Those are coming up, and we will go 4 hours on those. Yeah, that's going to do it. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Dan, for putting together beautiful slides and helping me read things. Shouts Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jared Allen.